The morning air at Fort Bragg carried the weight of 47 names, 47 missions, 47 perfect shots. Staff Sergeant Elena Castellano knew each one by heart, the way a pianist knows the keys beneath their fingers, the way a surgeon knows the exact pressure required to make an incision that saves rather than destroys. She knelt in the pre-dawn darkness, alone in the armory, running a cleaning rod through the barrel of her rifle with movements so practiced they had become a form of meditation. The weapon gleamed under the fluorescent lights, custom built, modified, perfected over 8 years of service that had taken her from the mountains of Montana to theaters of operation most civilians would never know existed. The rifle was not just a tool, it was an extension of her will, her vision, her purpose. Every groove had been machined to specifications measured in thousandths of an inch. Every component had been selected, tested, rejected, or approved based on standards that would seem obsessive to anyone who had never looked through a scope at a target 3,000 meters away and known that hesitation measured in heartbeats could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Elena was 29 years old. She looked younger in the dim light, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her hands moving with the steady confidence of someone who had learned early that perfection was not a goal but a requirement. Her father had taught her that. Michael Castellano, grizzly hunter, Vietnam veteran, the man who had put a rifle in her hands when she was barely tall enough to hold it steady and told her that shooting was not about killing. It was about discipline, about respect, about understanding that every action has consequences that ripple outward like stones thrown into still water. He had died when she was 10, killed in action during a mission in Colombia in 1998. Anti-narcotics operations, they had told her grandmother. Classified details. Closed casket funeral. A folded flag and a telegram that used words like sacrifice and honor and service. Elena had stood at that funeral in her Sunday dress, watching grown men cry, and she had made a decision that would shape every year that followed. She would finish what her father had started. She would become what he had been. Perfect. Unbreakable. A weapon in service of something larger than herself. The cleaning rod made a soft, metallic sound as it passed through the barrel. Elena examined the patch that emerged, checking for even the slightest discoloration that might indicate fouling or wear. Nothing. The weapon was pristine. It always was. She had fired 3,000 rounds through this barrel, and she maintained it with a devotion that bordered on religious. Because in her line of work, failure was not just professional embarrassment. Failure meant bodies coming home in boxes. Failure meant futures that would never happen. Children who would grow up without parents. Parents who would bury children. Ghost never misses. That was what they called her. Not to her face, usually, but she heard the whispers in the mess hall, saw the way younger soldiers looked at her with a mixture of respect and something that might have been fear. 47 missions, 47 confirmed eliminations. No misses, no maybes, no targets that got away because the wind shifted or the calculations were off or the shooter hesitated at the critical moment. Elena Castellano did not miss. She did not hesitate. She did not fail. Except once. The memory came unbidden, the way traumatic memories always do. Afghanistan, 2021. The final chaotic days before the withdrawal. A target identified as high value. Coordinates verified. Wind conditions optimal. Distance, 1,200 meters. Not even challenging by her standards. She had taken the shot. Perfect placement. Center mass. The target had dropped instantly. Mission accomplished. Except the target had been 16 years old. A boy. Taliban fighter, yes. Armed, yes. But still a boy with smooth cheeks and eyes that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Intel had said militant commander. Intel had been wrong. Or maybe Intel had been right and the commander had put a child in his place, knowing exactly what would happen. The rules of engagement had been followed. The paperwork had been processed. Her commander, Sergeant First Class Harrison Morrison, callsign Hawk, had taken full responsibility. Mission within parameters, he had written in his report. No fault assigned to the shooter. But Elena knew. Hawk knew. And somewhere out there, someone else knew. Someone who had loved that boy. Someone who would not forgive. Someone who would not forget. Elena shook her head, forcing the memory back into the locked room in her mind where she kept all the things that would destroy her if she examined them too closely. She reassembled the rifle with swift, economical movements. Bolt carrier group, upper receiver, scope mounted and torqued to exact specifications. The weapon came together like a puzzle that had only one correct solution, and her hands knew every step without conscious thought. The armory door opened behind her. She did not turn. She knew the sound of those footsteps, measured, unhurried, carrying the weight of someone who had walked through enough combat zones to know that rushing gets you killed. Sergeant Marcus Wade set 2 cups of coffee on the workbench beside her cleaning kit. Black, no sugar, exactly how she liked it. Wade was 35, with the kind of weathered face that came from years spent in places where the sun was an enemy and trust was a luxury no one could afford. He had been a spotter once, one of the best. Now he worked logistics, managing supply chains and equipment requisitions, the unglamorous work that kept special operations running. But he still understood. He still remembered what it meant to lie in the dirt for hours, watching a target through high-powered optics, calculating wind drift and bullet drop, while your partner's life depended on your numbers being perfect. "Thought you might need this," Wade said quietly. Elena nodded her thanks and took the cup. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint. Perfect, she continued her work, checking the scope mounts with a small torqued wrench, verifying that nothing had shifted even a fraction of a millimeter since her last inspection. "Briefing in 30, Wade added. His tone was casual, but there was something underneath it, something that made Elena pause and look at him directly for the first time. Wade met her eyes for a moment, then looked away. That tiny gesture told her more than words ever could. Whatever was waiting for her in that briefing room, Wade knew about it. And he was not happy. "Sector 7, Elena asked. Wade shook his head slowly. Bigger than that. He did not elaborate. Elena did not press. She would know soon enough. She finished securing her cleaning kit, every tool returned to its designated slot, every surface wiped down. Organization was not just preference. It was survival. When you needed to perform maintenance in complete darkness, guided only by muscle memory, the time you spent organizing in the light paid dividends that could save your life. She picked up the coffee and took a long drink. The heat burned her throat. Good. Pain meant focus. Pain meant she was present in the moment, not drifting into memories of faces she could not save or mistakes that could not be unmade. Wade stood nearby, not quite looking at her, his own coffee untouched. They had known each other for 6 years. He had been her spotter on 11 missions before his transfer. They had shared the kind of silence that comes from lying side by side in hostile territory for days at a time, communicating more through gesture and breath than words. She trusted him as much as she trusted anyone, which was to say, carefully, with reservations, always aware that trust was a calculated risk rather than a gift freely given. "You remember Kabul?" Wade asked suddenly. The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Elena knew better. Nothing Wade said was random. 2021, Elena replied. Her voice was flat, controlled, giving nothing away. "You ever think about it?" Elena set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Every day." Wade nodded. He finally picked up his own coffee, took a drink, made a face. "Still terrible at making it," he said, but the humor did not reach his eyes. "Be careful in there, Castellano. Whatever they ask you to do, just be careful." Before Elena could respond, Wade turned and walked out, leaving her alone with her rifle in a growing sense that the 47 perfect missions were about to become 48, and that this one might be different, might be the one where perfection was not enough. The briefing room was designed for function, not comfort. Concrete walls, metal chairs, a large screen at the front showing a black and white satellite image of terrain that could have been anywhere. Mountains, valleys, the kind of landscape where armies went to die and empires learned the limits of their power. Colonel Rebecca Novak stood at the front of the room, her posture military perfect, her expression carved from granite. She was 52 years old and looked like she had earned every year through direct combat with time itself. 3 combat deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, 1 Silver Star, a career built on making decisions that kept people alive and accepting the burden when those decisions failed. "Staff Sergeant Castellano," Novak said as Elena entered. Her voice carried the kind of authority that made junior officers stand straighter. "Take a seat." There were only 4 other people in the room. Wade standing near the back with his arms crossed. A captain Elena did not recognize, Asian features, maybe Korean ancestry, sitting ramrod straight with the thousand-yard stare of someone who had seen things that changed the shape of their soul. Two intelligence analysts, both civilians, both with the pale skin and caffeinated tremor of people who spent their lives in windowless rooms tracking threats through digital noise. Elena sat. She did not look at the screen. She looked at Novak. Reading faces was as much a part of her job as reading wind, and Novak's face was telling her that whatever was coming next would test her in ways that target practice and physical training could never prepare for. "Gentlemen, ladies," Novak began, "what I am about to share with you is classified, top secret, sensitive, compartmented information. Nothing discussed in this room leaves this room. Understood?" Affirmative responses. Nods. Elena said nothing. She had clearance. She knew the drill. Novak clicked a remote. The satellite image changed. Now it showed a compound. Buildings arranged in a defensive pattern. What looked like guard towers, vehicle tracks. The image quality was exceptional, probably from one of the new generation satellites, the ones that could read license plates from orbit. "Big Bend region," Novak said. "Texas side of the border. This compound belongs to an individual we have been tracking for 4 years. We call him the architect." The screen changed again. Now it showed a blurry photograph of a man, late 50s, maybe 60, hard to tell with the image quality, wearing civilian clothes, sunglasses, a hat that shadowed his features, but there was something about the way he stood. Military bearing, the posture of someone who had spent years having their spine aligned through drill sergeants and push-ups, and the kind of discipline that becomes cellular. "The architect is responsible for coordinating arms shipments to terrorist organizations operating in 3 continents," Novak continued. "We estimate he has been involved in transactions that have resulted in over 500 casualties among coalition forces and civilian populations. He is a ghost, no confirmed identity, no fingerprints in any database. But we know he exists because we have intercepted his communications. We know he operates because we have tracked his shipments. And we know he is extremely dangerous because everyone who has gotten close to identifying him has ended up dead." The screen changed again. Now it showed faces. 12 of them. All military or intelligence personnel, all marked with red X symbols, KIA, killed in action. The bottom right face made Elena's hands clench involuntarily. Sergeant First Class Harrison Morrison, Hawk, her mentor. The man who had taught her that being a sniper was not about the rifle, it was about the mind behind the rifle. The discipline, the ability to make the hard calls and live with them afterward. Hawk had died 3 years ago in what was officially listed as a training accident, helicopter malfunction. But Elena had never believed it. Hawk was too careful, too experienced, too good at reading situations and extracting himself before they went bad. "The architect killed him," Elena said. It was not a question. Novak's expression did not change. "We have intelligence that suggests Morrison was close to identifying the architect. 2 weeks later, he was dead. Make your own conclusions." The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the ventilation system. Elena stared at Hawk's face on the screen, remembered his voice, remembered the way he had looked at her after that mission in Kabul, when she had been ready to turn in her resignation because she could not get the image of that boy's face out of her head. Hawk had sat with her in the mess hall at 3 in the morning, drinking terrible coffee, and he had told her the truth that no one else would say out loud. "We do not get to choose our targets," Hawk had said. "We do not get to decide who lives and who dies based on our feelings about it. We get orders, we execute, and we carry the weight. That is the job. The moment you cannot carry it anymore, you turn in your resignation and you walk away. But you do not get to carry it halfway. You do not get to second guess in the field. Because the second you hesitate, someone else dies. Someone on our side, someone who did not sign up to be a weapon. They signed up to be protected by weapons. By us." Elena had not turned in her resignation. She had gone back to work. 40 missions later, she was still here, still carrying the weight, still perfect. "What do you need from me?" Elena asked. Novak clicked the remote again. The screen now showed a topographical map. Elevation lines, distance markers, 2 points highlighted in different colors. Red for the target compound, blue for a position in the mountains overlooking it. The architect has become complacent, Novak said. Our intelligence indicates he will be at this compound for the next 96 hours. He believes he is untouchable, too remote, too well defended. A conventional assault would be suicide. Airstrikes risk collateral damage. Civilian presence in the area. We need precision. The numbers on the screen made Elena's pulse quicken. Not from fear, from the challenge, from the recognition that this was what she had trained for, what she had been built to do. Range to target, 3,827 meters. The silence in the room became absolute. Even the intelligence analysts stopped typing. 3,827 meters was beyond the range of most sniper systems. It was beyond the confirmed record for longest successful engagement. It was the kind of distance where bullet drop measured in stories, where wind drift could push around into the next county, where the Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation became a factor you could not ignore. That is not possible, the Asian captain said quietly. His voice carried the accent of someone who had learned English as a second language, but had perfected it through years of use. The longest confirmed kill is 3,540 meters. Canadian Special Forces. That shot required perfect conditions, custom ammunition, days of preparation. Novak looked at Elena. Staff Sergeant Castellano has 47 confirmed eliminations, 0 misses. If anyone can make this shot, it is her. Elena was already running calculations in her head. Bullet drop at that range would be massive, 40 meters, maybe more depending on the exact ammunition and atmospheric conditions. Wind drift would be the real problem. At that distance, the bullet would be in flight for nearly 4 seconds. 4 seconds for wind to push it off course. 4 seconds for temperature gradients to affect trajectory. 4 seconds where 1,000 variables could turn a perfect shot into a complete miss. But possible. Mathematically possible. If everything aligned. If preparation was perfect. If execution was flawless. What are the atmospheric conditions in the target area, Elena asked. One of the intelligence analysts pulled up weather data. Wind patterns consistent from the southwest. Average 12 kilometers per hour, but variable based on thermal activity. Temperature range from 30 to 45 degrees Celsius. Low humidity, barometric pressure stable. Time of day? Dawn or dusk for optimal light conditions, the analyst replied. Thermal layering is least active during those windows. Elena nodded slowly. She looked at the map again, studied the terrain. The elevation difference between the proposed firing position and the target was significant. 680 meters of vertical drop. That would affect the trajectory calculations. But it also meant the bullet would be falling into the target rather than fighting gravity the entire way. Physics working with her instead of against her. I need 72 hours minimum, Elena said. 48 for reconnaissance and atmospheric monitoring. 24 for final preparation and positioning. I need a spotter with advanced optics and meteorological training. I need access to match-grade ammunition, same lot number, temperature-controlled storage. I need detailed satellite imagery updated every 6 hours. And I need to know why. Novak raised an eyebrow. Why? Why this matters. Why this target is worth a shot that has never been successfully made at this range. Why we are risking a mission profile with this many variables instead of waiting for a better opportunity. Because if I am going to attempt something this difficult, I need to know it is worth it. Novak's expression softened almost imperceptibly. A good question. The answer, the architect is planning something big. We have intercepted communications that suggest a major operation within the next week. Something involving 500 kilograms of C4 explosive and multiple border crossing points. If we do not stop him now, a lot of people are going to die. Civilians, women, children, people who have nothing to do with our wars but will pay the price anyway. Elena looked at Hawk's face on the screen again. Remembered his voice. Remembered his lessons. Remembered the weight he had carried and passed to her when he died. Who is my spotter? Elena asked. Novak gestured to the Asian captain. Captain David Park, former reconnaissance specialist. Multiple deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. Expert in environmental analysis and ballistic calculation. He has the highest accuracy rate for spotter assistance in the entire Special Operations Command. Park stood and offered his hand. Elena shook it. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Professional. His eyes met hers directly, but there was something behind them. A shadow. Pain that had not fully healed. She recognized it because she saw the same thing in the mirror every morning. I have read your file, Park said. His voice was quiet, controlled. 47 perfect shots. That is impressive. 47 so far, Elena replied. Let us make it 48. The briefing continued for another hour. Details about the compound layout, security patterns, known weapon systems, potential extraction routes if the mission was compromised. Elena absorbed it all, filing information into the organized compartments of her mind, where tactical data lives separate from emotional response. This was how she operated. This was how she survived. By keeping the human cost in one box and the technical requirements in another, and never letting the two boxes touch, except in the quiet hours when sleep would not come and the faces of the dead demanded acknowledgement. When the briefing ended, Elena was the last to leave. She stood in front of the screen, looking at the satellite image of the target compound. Somewhere in those buildings was a man called the Architect, a man who had killed Hawk, a man who was planning to kill hundreds more. And in 96 hours, if everything went perfectly, Elena would send a bullet across nearly 4 kilometers of Texas wilderness to end his operational capacity permanently. She felt the weight of it settling onto her shoulders. 47 perfect missions, each one a burden, each one a responsibility, each one a debt she owed to everyone who trusted her to be the weapon they needed when all other options had failed. Ghost never misses, she whispered to the empty room. But even ghosts can be haunted. Elena's quarters were Spartan: regulation bed, footlocker, desk with a single lamp. On the wall, a photograph. Her father in his dress uniform. Young, smiling, full of the kind of confidence that comes from not yet knowing what the world can take from you. Beside it, a framed flag, triangular fold, stars and stripes that had covered a casket 28 years ago. Under the flag, a small wooden box containing the only personal items she kept. Dog tags, her father's. Michael Castellano, blood type O positive, Catholic, killed in action, 1998, Colombia. She sat at the desk and opened her laptop. Secure military network, encrypted connection. She pulled up the file on the Architect, reading every scrap of intelligence they had gathered. It was frustratingly sparse. No photographs showing his full face, no confirmed real name, no background that could be verified through normal channels. He was a ghost, like her. Except where her invisibility came from perfect execution, his came from perfect deception. The file mentioned 12 confirmed kills of personnel who had gotten too close to identifying him. 12 people who had thought they were careful enough, smart enough, protected enough. They had all been wrong. Hawk's name was 11th on the list. The 12th had died just 6 months ago. A CIA analyst. Car bomb in Vienna. No suspects, no leads. Just another ghost erasing anyone who threatened to give him substance. Elena clicked through the surveillance photos. The Architect moving between buildings, always with his face obscured, always aware of camera angles, professional, trained. This was not some amateur terrorist who had gotten lucky. This was someone with serious operational experience, someone who knew how intelligence agencies worked because he had probably worked for one, or maybe still did. The world of covert operations had more shades of gray than anyone wanted to admit. Her phone buzzed. Oh, text message. Wade, you need to see something. Maintenance Bay 3, now. Elena closed the laptop and stood. Wade did not send messages like that unless it was important. She grabbed her jacket and headed out into the night. Fort Bragg at midnight was a strange place. Empty but not quiet. The constant low hum of generators. Distant sounds of training exercises. Somewhere a drill sergeant was making some poor trainee's life miserable. The cycle continued. It always continued. Maintenance Bay 3 was dark except for a single work light over one of the equipment benches. Wade stood next to her rifle case, his expression grim. He had the case open. The rifle lay in its foam padding, partially disassembled. "What are you doing with my weapon?" Elena demanded, keeping her voice level despite the spike of anger. No one touched her rifle. No one. "Checking something," Wade replied. He pointed to the barrel with a small flashlight. "Look inside. Tell me what you see." Elena pulled a bore scope from the toolkit and threaded it into the barrel. The small camera fed an image to a connected screen. She examined every inch of the rifling, looking for wear, for fouling, for anything that might affect accuracy. And there it was, so small she almost missed it. A hairline scratch on one of the lands, barely visible. But at the distances she would be shooting, barely visible could mean several meters of deviation at impact. How did this happen? Elena asked quietly. Her maintenance procedures were perfect. She would have noticed this during her inspection this morning. It did not happen, Wade said. His eyes met hers. It was done. Someone scratched your barrel between the time you cleaned it this morning and when I checked it an hour ago. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Sabotage. Someone had deliberately damaged her weapon. Someone with access to the secure armory. Someone who knew what she was being tasked to do and wanted her to fail. Or worse, wanted her to die when a miscalibrated shot gave away her position and enemy forces converged on her location. Who has access? Elena asked. Wade shook his head. That is the problem. Maintenance personnel, armory staff, any officer with the right clearance. Could be 20 people, could be 50. And we cannot exactly launch an investigation without tipping off whoever did this that we know. Elena picked up her rifle, feeling the familiar weight, the weapon she had trusted with her life. Now compromised, now suspect. She would need a replacement barrel. New zero confirmation, complete recalibration, and less than 72 hours to make it all happen. There is more, Wade said. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was blurry, taken from a distance with low light. But it showed a man standing outside the armory. Average height, average build. Face turned away from the camera, as if he knew exactly where the security cameras were positioned. Timestamp is 0300 this morning, Wade explained. 2 hours before you showed up for maintenance. He used a key card with clearance I cannot trace. Was inside for approximately 4 minutes. Left without being stopped or questioned. Professional. Knew exactly what he was doing. Elena studied the photograph. Something about the man's posture nagged at her. The way he stood, the angle of his shoulders. Familiar, but she could not place it. Military bearing, definitely. But that described half the base. Send me that image, Elena said. I want to look at it more closely. Wade transferred the file to her phone. Already did. But Castellano, listen, someone inside our organization does not want this mission to succeed. Either they are working for the architect, or they have some other agenda we do not know about yet. Either way, you cannot trust anyone, not the intelligence analysts, not the command structure, maybe not even Park. What about you? Elena asked. Can I trust you? Wade was silent for a long moment. His face in the harsh work light looked older than his 35 years. Tired, carrying burdens that went beyond rank and duty. I should have told you something a long time ago, Wade finally said. About Kabul, about that mission. But I did not because Hawk asked me not to. He took the blame. He protected you. But the truth is more complicated than the official report. Elena felt her chest tighten. What are you talking about? Wade looked away. Not now. After this mission, if we both survive it, I will tell you everything. But right now, you need to focus on the shot, on staying alive, on making sure the architect does not kill anyone else the way he killed Hawk. Promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will question everything. Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed again. Official message this time. Colonel Novak, report to briefing room immediately. New intelligence. Wade saw her expression. Go, I will get your rifle to the weapons tech. We will have a replacement barrel installed and calibrated by morning. But watch your back. Someone is playing games with your life, and we do not know who or why yet. Elena left the maintenance bay and walked quickly across the dark base toward the command building. Her mind was racing. Sabotaged weapon. Mystery man with armory access. Wade's cryptic warnings about Kabul. And now new intelligence at midnight. None of this felt right. Missions did not normally spin up this fast. Briefings did not happen in the middle of the night unless something had changed. Something urgent. The briefing room was empty except for Novak and one of the intelligence analysts. The screen showed a new satellite image. This one-time stamp less than an hour ago. The target compound. But now there was activity. Vehicles. People moving with purpose. A pattern that suggested preparation for departure. The architect is leaving, Novak said without preamble. Our window just collapsed from 96 hours to less than 24. We have thermal imaging that suggests he is preparing to move a large shipment out of the compound by dawn. If we do not act now, we lose him. 24 hours is not enough time, Elena protested. I need reconnaissance. I need atmospheric data. My weapon just had to have emergency maintenance. This is not just difficult, this is borderline impossible. Novak's expression was stone. I understand that, Staff Sergeant. But impossible is why you are here. The Canadian who made the previous record shot took one attempt. One bullet, one chance. You are being asked to do the same, except the stakes are higher and the time is shorter, and failure is not an option. Elena stared at the screen, at the tiny figures moving around the compound. One of them was the architect. One of them had killed her mentor. One of them was planning to use 500 kilograms of explosives to murder people who had done nothing except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. When is insertion? Elena asked. Captain Park is being briefed now. Helicopter leaves at 0400. That gives you 3 hours to prep. You will have 16 hours on site before the optimal shooting window. Dawn light, stable atmospherics, one shot. One shot, Elena repeated. The words felt heavy in her mouth. 47 perfect missions. All of them had been difficult. All of them had required skill and preparation and absolute focus. But none of them had been this. None of them had been impossible. I need one thing, Elena said. Novak waited. I need to know who had access to the armory between 0300 and 0500 this morning. Someone sabotaged my weapon. I need to know if that person is part of this operation. Novak's expression did not change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Calculation, assessment, decision. I will look into it, Novak said. But right now, you need to focus on the mission. Everything else is secondary. Understood? With respect, Colonel, if someone inside our command structure is compromised, that directly affects mission success. I need to know if I can trust the intelligence I am receiving. I need to know if my extraction plan is legitimate or if I am being set up to fail. The silence stretched between them. Novak and Elena, officer and enlisted, commander and weapon. The hierarchy was clear, but so was the reality. Without Elena, this mission did not happen. Without trust, Elena would not take the shot. Your weapon will be ready in 2 hours, Novak finally said. I personally will verify the work. Your ammunition will be from a sealed lot that has been in climate-controlled storage. Your intelligence package will be triple verified. And when you get back from this mission, you and I will have a conversation about trust and chain of command. Us. Fair? Fair, Elena agreed. Now get out of here and prep your gear. You have a long night ahead of you. Elena returned to her quarters and began the process of preparation. It was mechanical, ritual, something she had done so many times it required no conscious thought. But her mind was elsewhere, on the scratched barrel, on Wade's warning, on the photograph of the mystery man outside the armory, on the impossible shot she was being asked to take with less than a day to prepare. She opened the wooden box and took out her father's dog tags, held them in her hand, felt the worn metal. Michael Castellano, killed in action, 28 years ago in a country she had never visited on a mission whose details were still classified. Her father had been a weapon too, had taken orders, had executed missions, had died serving something larger than himself. And now his daughter was walking the same path. Do not fail, she whispered to the dog tags, to her father, to herself. Do not miss. Do not hesitate. Be perfect. Because 47 perfect shots meant nothing if number 48 missed. And missing meant the architect would disappear, would continue his operations, would kill more people, would prove that Hawk had died for nothing. Elena Castellano did not miss, could not miss, would not miss. She was a ghost. Perfect, unbreakable, and in less than 24 hours she would prove it again, or die trying. The dog tags went back in the box went back under the flag, and Elena went to work. Because weapons do not have feelings. Weapons do not have doubts. Weapons simply execute, and that was what she had been built to do. Outside, the night waited. The helicopter was being prepped. Captain Park was studying maps. Colonel Novak was making phone calls. Marcus Wade was installing a new barrel on a rifle that would be asked to do something no rifle had ever done before. And somewhere in the Texas desert, a man called the architect slept peacefully, unaware that a ghost was coming for him. That 48 missions were about to become 48 perfect shots. That the longest kill in military history was about to be attempted by a 29-year-old woman who carried the weight of 47 names and refused to add one more to the list of targets that got away. The dawn would bring answers. The dawn would bring truth. The dawn would bring a bullet traveling at 800 meters per second across a distance that mathematics said was possible and experience said was madness. And Elena Castellano would be the one to pull the trigger. Because that was what ghosts did. They haunted, they hunted, and they never, ever missed. The helicopter blades carved through darkness like a knife through silk. Elena sat in the cargo bay with her eyes closed, but sleep was impossible. Not with the vibration of the rotors rattling through her bones, not with the weight of the mission pressing down like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Across from her, Captain David Park stared out the open door at the landscape sliding past below. Black mountains, darker valleys, the kind of terrain where civilizations went to hide their secrets and wars went to become forgotten. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset, 15 minutes to insertion, weather holding steady, wind from the southwest at 14 clicks, temperature dropping to 28 Celsius at your altitude. Elena opened her eyes and looked at her rifle case secured beside her. New barrel installed. 0 confirmed at the range just 3 hours ago. 3 shots at 1,000 meters, all within a 2-inch group. The weapon tech had done good work. Fast work. The kind of work that happened when a colonel stood over your shoulder and made it clear that failure was not acceptable. But Elena could not shake the memory of that scratch. That deliberate sabotage. Someone had wanted her weapon compromised. Someone with access. Someone with knowledge. Someone who might still be watching. She glanced at Park. He had barely spoken during the flight. Just studied maps and weather data with the focused intensity of a man trying to calculate his way out of an impossible situation. His face in the red cargo lights looked carved from old wood. Lines around his eyes that came from squinting through scopes for too many years. A scar along his jawline that told a story he probably never shared. Elena had read his file during the brief window she had for preparation. 15 years in special operations, expert marksman, reconnaissance specialist, multiple commendations, and then a note that made her pause. Psychological evaluation following mission failure. Afghanistan, 2021. Passed with reservations. The same year as Kabul. The same year Elena had killed a 16-year-old boy. The same year something had broken inside both of them that no amount of training or discipline could completely repair. Park looked up and caught her watching him. For a moment their eyes met and Elena saw the recognition there, the kind that came from shared trauma. From knowing what it meant to pull a trigger and have the world change in ways you could never undo. You ever worked Big Ben before? Park asked. His voice was quiet, almost lost under the rotor noise. Elena shook her head. You? Once. Counter-smuggling operation. The terrain is brutal. Hot during the day, cold at night, lots of places to hide. Lots of places to die if you are not careful. He went back to his maps. Elena watched him trace elevation lines with one finger. Calculating, planning, the work of a professional who understood that survival in hostile territory came down to preparation and luck, and knowing which one mattered more in any given moment. The helicopter banked hard. Elena felt her stomach drop as they descended into a canyon. The pilot was good, flying low to avoid radar, using the terrain to mask their approach. This was not a sanctioned operation in the traditional sense. No air support, no quick reaction force waiting on standby. If something went wrong, they were on their own. Just 2 operators with high-tech equipment and the slim hope that mathematics and skill would bridge the gap between possible and impossible. 1 minute, the pilot announced. Elena and Park moved in synchronized silence, checking gear, securing equipment, running through mental checklists that had been drilled into them through countless repetitions. Elena's ruck weighed 70 pounds. Ammunition, water, rations for 72 hours, even though they only planned to be out for 24. Because plans changed. Because Murphy's Law was the only law that never got repealed. Because being prepared meant assuming everything would go wrong and packing accordingly. The helicopter touched down on a flat section of ridge, barely large enough to accommodate the skids. The moment the wheels made contact, Elena and Park were moving. Out the door, gear flowing smoothly. 3 seconds on the ground and they were clear. The helicopter lifted immediately. Noise fading, darkness swallowing the aircraft like it had never existed. And then silence. Not complete silence. The wind made sounds in the rocks. Somewhere far away, a coyote called to the night, but the human noise was gone. The mechanical intrusion was over. Now it was just two people standing on a mountain in Texas with the stars overhead and a mission that required them to find a man 3 kilometers away and end his life from a distance that defied everything reasonable about rifle marksmanship. Park pulled out night vision goggles and scanned the terrain. Elena did the same. The world turned green and grainy, rocks and brush and the faint heat signatures of small animals going about their nocturnal business. No human activity, no patrols, no indication that their insertion had been noticed. So far, the mission profile was holding, but Elena had learned long ago that missions never went wrong at the beginning. They went wrong in the middle when you were committed and extraction was hours away and the only choice was to push forward or die trying. 8 kilometers to primary observation point, Park said softly. We should maintain noise discipline from here forward. Hand signals only unless absolutely necessary. Elena nodded. They began to move. Park took point with the GPS and terrain maps. Elena followed 3 meters back with her rifle case secured across her body and her senses stretched to maximum awareness. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound could be the first indication of compromise. The trick was to stay alert without becoming paranoid, to trust your training without becoming complacent, to walk the razor edge between caution and paralysis. The terrain was exactly as brutal as Park had described. Loose rock that shifted underfoot, steep sections that required careful climbing, vegetation that grabbed at clothing and equipment, and everywhere the sense of exposure, of being watched. Elena knew it was psychological. The human brain did not like open spaces at night, did not like feeling vulnerable. But knowing the source of the anxiety did not make it go away. It just meant you acknowledged it and kept moving. After an hour of careful movement, Park held up a fist. Stop. Elena froze. Park pointed to a depression in the rocks about 20 meters ahead. Potential observation post. Could be occupied. They approached slowly, weapons ready, but the position was empty, just a natural formation that would provide decent cover and sightlines. Park examined the ground with a small red light that would not ruin their night vision. Fresh tracks, recent, within the last 6 hours. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Someone had been here. Someone who knew how to use terrain. Someone who might still be close. Park looked at her. His expression in the dim light was unreadable. We need to assume the architect has security patrols in the area. Standard operating procedure for anyone running a compound in hostile territory. We will need to move slower, more careful. They continued, but now every step was measured, every sound analyzed. The mission timeline was already tight. Adding hours to their movement would make the shooting window even narrower. But rushing would get them killed or compromised. The eternal tension of special operations. Speed versus stealth. Aggression versus survival. By the time they reached the primary observation point, dawn was less than 3 hours away. Elena's legs burned from the climb. Her shoulders ached from the weight of the ruck. But the discomfort was distant. Background noise. What mattered was the position, the sight lines, the range to target. Park set up the spotting equipment while Elena conducted a detailed survey with her own optics. The target compound lay in the valley below. Even in the darkness, she could make out structures, vehicles, the faint glow of lights that suggested generators and human habitation. During the briefing, intelligence had estimated 20 to 30 personnel, armed, trained, loyal to the architect or at least loyal to his money. Range to primary structure, Park whispered after completing his laser measurements. 3,750 meters. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. The range was even farther than the briefing had indicated. 77 meters might not sound like much, but at these distances, every meter mattered. Every meter added complexity to the ballistic equation. Every meter increased the chance that some variable they had not accounted for would push the bullet off target. Wind at our elevation is steady from the southwest at 12 kilometers per hour, Park continued. But we will need to monitor conditions at multiple levels between here and the target. Thermal layering will affect trajectory. Elena began her own assessment, pulled out her tablet with the ballistic software, input range, elevation difference, current atmospheric conditions. The program calculated a firing solution. Elevation adjustment of 38.4 milliradians, Wind hold of 7.2 milliradians. Time of flight 3.8 seconds. Margin of error at this distance, plus or minus 2 meters even under optimal conditions. 2 meters was the difference between a center mass hit and a complete miss. 2 meters was the width of a doorway. 2 meters was the space where mission success became mission failure, and a high-value target slipped away to plan more attacks. "We need to monitor this position for at least 6 hours, Elena said quietly. "Document movement patterns. Identify the target. Verify that our intelligence is accurate. I am not taking a shot at this range based on assumptions." Park nodded. He began setting up the long-term observation equipment. High-powered optics, recording devices, atmospheric sensors that would track wind speed and direction at multiple altitudes. The technology was impressive, expensive, the kind of gear that made missions like this possible, but also made them dependent on systems that could fail. Elena found a comfortable shooting position, not the one she would use for the actual engagement. That would come later. This was for observation, for learning, for understanding the rhythm of the compound below and the patterns of the men who moved through it. The sun began its slow climb toward the horizon, gray light spreading across the landscape like ink and water. Details emerged from darkness. The compound became real, solid. Elena could see buildings now, guard posts, a vehicle park with 3 trucks and what looked like a modified technical with a heavy machine gun mounted in the bed. Defensive positions that covered the likely approaches. This was not some amateur operation. This was a professional setup run by someone who understood security and took it seriously. "Movement," Park said softly. "South building. 2 individuals." Elena swung her scope to cover the area. 2 men emerged into the early light, both armed, both moving with the casual alertness of guards who had been on duty too long and were ready for shift change. They walked a predictable pattern, checked doors, looked at sight lines. Professional, trained. After 10 minutes, they disappeared back inside. Elena made notes: time, location, behavior, building a database of information that might prove critical. Intelligence briefings were valuable, but nothing replaced direct observation. Nothing replaced watching your target area with your own eyes and learning its rhythms the way a predator learns the habits of prey. The morning grew warmer. Temperature climbed toward the forecast 38 Celsius. Elena felt sweat beginning to soak through her clothing. The observation position had good cover, but no shade. They would be exposed to the sun all day. Dehydration was a real risk. Heat exhaustion, the slow degradation of mental performance that came from the body's resources being diverted to cooling rather than thinking. Park handed her a water bottle. "Drink, stay hydrated, we have plenty." Elena drank. The water was warm, but it didn't matter. What mattered was maintaining physical capability. The human body was just another piece of equipment. It needed fuel. It needed maintenance. Neglect it, and it would fail at the worst possible moment. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Elena watched the compound through her scope, learning, memorizing. She counted 17 different individuals over the course of the morning. Males, ages ranging from late teens to 50s. Most carried rifles, K-pattern weapons. A few had more modern equipment. One man stood out, older, moving with authority. Others deferred to him, but his face was always turned away from her position, always in shadow or behind sunglasses. Careful, aware. "Target confirmed," Park whispered. "Main building. Just exited." Elena shifted her scope, and there he was, the architect, 60 years old according to intelligence estimates. Gray hair, weathered skin, moving with the kind of fluid economy that came from a lifetime of physical discipline. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a long-sleeved shirt despite the heat, and on his right wrist, just visible when his sleeve shifted, a scar, shaped like a cross. Elena's breath caught. She had seen that scar before, in a photograph, in a file, in a memory that suddenly blazed to life with painful clarity. Park noticed her reaction. "You recognize him?" Elena could not speak, could not process what she was seeing, because the scar was distinctive, unique. She had seen it in her childhood, on her father's wrist, a burn scar from a camping accident when he was young, a cross shape that he had joked was his personal mark, his signature. But her father was dead, killed in Colombia in 1998, buried with full military honors. His dog tag sat in a wooden box in her quarters back at Fort Bragg. This could not be him. Could not be Michael Castellano. Could not be the man who had taught her to shoot and told her stories and died before she turned 11. Elena, Park said quietly, what is wrong? She forced herself to breathe, to think, to push down the surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm operational discipline. It was coincidence. It had to be. Scars happened. Similar shapes occurred. The human brain saw patterns where none existed. Pareidolia, apophenia, the tendency to find meaning in random data. Nothing, Elena managed. Thought I saw something. False alarm. But it was not nothing, and Park's expression said he did not believe her. Still, he did not press. He went back to his observations. Recording, documenting, building the intelligence picture. Elena watched the architect move through the compound. The way he walked, the way he gestured, the way he carried himself. And with each moment, her certainty grew. This was not coincidence. This was not random pattern recognition. This was something else, something impossible. Something that made her question everything she had been told about her father's death. She pulled out her phone. It had no signal this deep in the wilderness, but it had photos, files she had scanned and saved years ago. Her father's service record, his photographs, and there in a picture from 1997, her father with his sleeve rolled up. The scar clearly visible. Identical shape, identical location. Park, Elena said slowly, I need you to do something. And I need you not to ask questions until I am ready to answer them. Park looked at her, steady, professional. What do you need? Get facial recognition on that target. Run it through every database we have access to. Military, CIA, FBI, everything. That will take time. We might not have connectivity out here for secure transmission. Then we make time, and we find connectivity. Because I need to know who that man really is before I pull the trigger. Park studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. I will set it up. But Elena, if something is wrong with this mission, if you have doubts, we need to discuss it now. Not when you are on the firing line. I do not have doubts about my ability to make the shot, Elena replied. I have doubts about whether the man I am being asked to kill is who they say he is. The afternoon brought new challenges. The temperature peaked at 41 Celsius. The heat created shimmer effects that distorted long-range optics. Thermal layering became severe enough that Elena could see the air itself rippling between her position and the compound. These were exactly the conditions that made extreme-range shooting nearly impossible. The bullet would pass through multiple layers of air at different temperatures and densities. Each layer would affect trajectory in ways that were difficult to predict and harder to compensate for. We cannot shoot in these conditions, Elena said. The atmospheric instability alone would push the bullet several meters off target. We need dawn or dusk, minimal thermal activity. Park agreed. He had been monitoring conditions all day, and his data confirmed what Elena's experience told her. The shooting window would be narrow, early morning before the sun heated the desert, or evening after temperatures began to fall. But the mission timeline said the architect would be moving his shipment at dawn, which meant the shot had to happen in the morning. One opportunity, one bullet, one chance to either succeed or fail and live with the consequences. As the sun began its descent, activity in the compound increased. More vehicles arrived, men loaded equipment, the organized chaos of a major operation preparing to move. Elena watched through her scope and felt the weight of time pressing down. Somewhere in those buildings was information about where 500 kilograms of C4 was going, who it would kill, what attack was being planned, and her orders were not to capture, not to interrogate, just to eliminate, to remove the architect from the equation and trust that his death would disrupt the operation enough to prevent catastrophe. But what if the architect was her father? What if Michael Castellano had not died in Colombia? What if he had disappeared for reasons Elena could not begin to understand? What if the next bullet she fired would kill the man who had given her life? Park's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. I have connectivity. Satellite uplink, it is weak but stable. Uploading the facial recognition request now. It will take approximately 2 hours to process through the databases. 2 hours. Elena looked at her watch. That would put them well into evening. The compound would be dark. Observation would become difficult, but they would have an answer, or at least the beginning of one. The sun touched the horizon. Colors bled across the sky, orange and red and purple. Beautiful in a way that felt wrong given the situation, given what the night would bring. Elena had spent so many evenings in places like this, watching sunsets from positions where beauty and death existed side by side, where the same eyes that appreciated the play of light on mountains would later look through a scope and calculate the precise point to place a bullet in human flesh. Movement below, Park said suddenly. His voice had an edge. Multiple vehicles departing the compound, heading east. Elena swung her scope to track them. 3 trucks, moving fast, kicking up dust. She could see armed men in the beds, see cargo covered with tarps. This was it. The shipment, moving ahead of schedule. Either their intelligence had been wrong about the timing or the architect had changed his plans. "We need to call it in," Park said. "Command needs to know the operation is moving now." Elena grabbed the radio, but before she could key the microphone, Park's hand stopped her. "Wait," he said quietly. "Listen." Elena froze, and then she heard it. Voices close, too close, speaking Spanish. Moving through the rocks below their position. A patrol coming up the ridge directly toward them. Park's eyes met Elena's. The message was clear. If they transmitted, the radio signal might be detected. If they stayed silent, the patrol might pass. If they engaged, the gunfire would alert the compound and the mission would be blown. 3 bad options. No good choices. The eternal calculus of operations that went wrong in slow motion. Elena made the decision. She set down the radio and picked up her sidearm, threaded the suppressor onto the barrel. Park did the same. They moved to positions with clear fields of fire. Waited, hearts pounding, breathing measured. Every sense focused on the sounds of men climbing toward them through the darkness. The first voice was young, complaining about the climb, about the heat, about being stuck on patrol duty when everyone else got to be part of the big operation. The second voice was older, telling him to shut up and do his job. Standard military banter. The universal language of soldiers who did not want to be where they were but had no choice in the matter. The patrol appeared. 2 men, maybe 20 meters below the observation position, close enough that Elena could see their faces in the fading light. Both armed, both alert enough to be dangerous, but not alert enough to spot a well-concealed position. They paused, looked around. One of them lit a cigarette. The brief flare of the lighter was bright in the gloom. "This is far enough," the older one said. "We check the ridge. We report nothing. We go back. No one comes up here. Too much work." The younger one laughed. "Agreed. Let us go back before we miss dinner." They turned and started back down. Elena watched them go, watched the tiny glow of the cigarette fade into darkness, felt the tension drain from her muscles. Crisis averted, luck holding, the mission still viable. Park exhaled slowly. That was close. Too close, Elena agreed. If they come back with more men, if they decide to search more thoroughly, we will deal with it if it happens. Right now, we need to focus on the task. The night deepened. Stars emerged. The compound below lit up with generators and floodlights. Elena could see the remaining vehicles, see the guards on duty, see the architect moving between buildings. Still alive, still operational, still the target. Park's laptop beeped softly. The facial recognition results are back. Elena felt her heart rate spike. She moved to look at the screen. Park opened the file, and everything Elena thought she knew about her life shattered into pieces she did not know how to reassemble. The match came back positive. 94% confidence. The man in the compound was not just similar to Michael Castellano. He was Michael Castellano, born 1960, enlisted 1978, multiple deployments, special operations, and then in 1998, listed as killed in action. Colombia anti-narcotics mission. Body never recovered due to circumstances. Posthumous commendations. The official record matched what Elena had been told her entire life. Except the official record was wrong, because Michael Castellano was alive, had been alive for 28 years, had let his daughter grow up believing he was dead, had built a new life as an arms dealer and terrorist facilitator, had become the very thing he had supposedly died fighting against. "Elena," Park said carefully, "I do not understand what I am looking at. The database says this man is deceased, but he is clearly alive, which means either the database is wrong or my father faked his death," Elena finished, "or he was disappeared, or something happened in Colombia that the official story does not cover. Something bad enough that he had to become a ghost." Park was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, "I need to make a call. Secure line. There are people who need to know about this before we proceed. He pulled out a satellite phone, encrypted, secure, the kind of equipment that costs more than most people made in a year. He stepped away from the observation position, spoke in low tones that Elena could not quite hear. She watched the compound, watched her father, tried to process the impossible reality. When Park returned, his expression was grim. I spoke to my CIA handler, the one I have been reporting to parallel to the military chain of command. Elena turned slowly. Your what? I am sorry, Elena. I should have told you earlier. I am not just Army. I am also agency, assigned to this operation to observe and report, to make sure the mission stays within acceptable parameters. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You are a spy. I am an intelligence officer doing my job, Park replied. And right now my job is to tell you that we have a serious problem. The order I just received is to abort the mission immediately. Do not engage the target, exfil as soon as possible. This operation has been compromised at levels we do not understand yet. Elena stared at him. Abort? We are hours from the shooting window. The architect is right there. If we leave now, we lose him. The architect is your father, Park said gently. You cannot take that shot. You know you cannot. The psychological impact alone would destroy you. And there are larger issues in play here. If Michael Castellano faked his death 28 years ago, someone helped him. Someone with authority. Someone who might still be protecting him. I do not care, Elena said. Her voice was ice. He killed Hawk. He has killed dozens of others. He is planning an attack that will murder civilians. Whatever he was does not change what he is now. Park stepped closer. Listen to yourself. You are compromised. Your judgment is affected. This is exactly why CIA wanted oversight on this mission. Because sometimes the shooter is too close to the target, too personally invested. And when that happens, mistakes get made. People die who should not die. Elena met his eyes. Are you going to stop me? The question hung in the air between them. Two professionals, two warriors, two people who had been trained to follow orders, but also trained to make decisions when orders conflicted with reality. Park had a weapon. Elena had a weapon. If it came to that, one of them would not leave this ridge alive. Park held her gaze for a long moment. Then he sighed. No, I am not going to stop you, but I am going to ask you to think about what you are doing, to consider the possibility that this mission is not what it seems, that you are being used, that someone wants you to kill your father, and they have spent a lot of time and effort setting up the circumstances to make it happen. Why would anyone do that? Elena demanded. I do not know yet, Park admitted. But the fact that I do not know is exactly what worries me. In my experience, when things do not make sense, it is because you do not have all the information. And operating without complete information gets people killed. Elena turned back to her scope, looked at the compound, looked at her father moving through the lights and shadows, thought about Hawk dying, thought about attacks being planned, thought about all the names on her list of perfect shots and whether number 48 would be the one that broke her. I am taking the shot, she said quietly, at dawn, when the conditions are optimal, because that is what I was sent here to do. That is what I trained my entire life to do. And if it turns out I am being manipulated, if this is some kind of setup, then whoever is responsible will answer for it. But the mission comes first, always. Park said nothing. He went back to his equipment, continued monitoring, continued recording, playing his role. Elena did the same. But everything had changed. The mission was no longer simple. The target was no longer just a name and a face. And the bullet she would fire in a few hours would carry more weight than any she had ever sent downrange. The night wore on. Elena and Park maintained watch in shifts, one observing while the other rested. But rest was impossible for Elena. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father, saw the scar on his wrist, saw the photograph from her childhood, heard his voice teaching her to shoot, felt the impossible weight of knowing that the man who had given her life was now the man she had been ordered to take life from. At 0300 hours, Park shook her shoulder gently. Movement in the compound. The architect is preparing to leave. Elena came fully awake in an instant, grabbed her optics, saw vehicles being loaded, saw men moving with purpose, saw her father directing operations like the commander he had once been. This was it. The moment intelligence had predicted. The shipment moving out at dawn. Atmospheric conditions are optimal, Park reported. Wind steady at 11 kilometers per hour. Temperature stable. Thermal layering minimal. If you are going to take this shot, now is the time. Elena began her pre-engagement routine, the ritual she had performed 47 times before. Check weapon, verify 0, load ammunition, control breathing, center mind, become the weapon, shed the human concerns and doubts and emotions, transform into pure function, pure purpose. But this time it was different. This time the human would not separate from the weapon. This time Elena Castellano could not become ghost and leave her emotions behind. Because the target was not just a target. The target was the reason she existed, the reason she had become what she was, the man who had shaped her and then disappeared and left her to build a life on the foundation of his ghost. Parks set up the spotting scope, called out the data she needed, range 3,750 meters, elevation adjustment 38.6 milliradians, wind hold 7.1 milliradians, barometric pressure 1,013 hectopascals, temperature 29 Celsius, all the numbers that would determine whether the bullet flew true or missed by meters. Target is entering vehicle, Park said quietly. You have maybe 60 seconds before he is no longer in the open. Elena settled into her final firing position. The rifle felt like an extension of her body, familiar, trusted. The scope showed her father in perfect clarity. She could see his face now, older, weathered, but unmistakably him. Unmistakably the man who had died 28 years ago and somehow continued living. Her finger found the trigger, applied the first pressure, took up the slack. Breathing became automatic. Heart rate slowed. The world narrowed to the view through the scope and the calculations running through her mind and the impossible decision that had to be made in seconds. Send it, Park whispered. The traditional spotter's call, the signal that all conditions were optimal, that the shot was there for the taking. But Elena did not fire, could not fire, because in that moment her father turned, looked directly toward her position, as if he knew, as if he could feel her watching across 3.75 kilometers of Texas wilderness. And he smiled. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of recognition, of acknowledgement, of a father seeing his daughter one last time before the inevitable happened. And in that smile, Elena understood. This was not an accident. This was not coincidence. Her father knew she was here, knew what she had been sent to do, and he was not running, not hiding. He was waiting, accepting, perhaps even welcoming what came next. The moment stretched, father and daughter separated by distance and time and choices that could never be undone. Connected by blood and training and the terrible understanding that some things cannot be forgiven but might be understood. And then Elena's phone buzzes, a message from Marcus Wade. 3 words that changed everything. Do not trust Park. Elena's world tilted. She pulled her eye from the scope, looked at Park, found him staring back at her with an expression she could not read. And his hand was on his sidearm, not drawing, not threatening, just resting there, ready. What did Wade tell you? Park asked quietly. Elena kept her voice steady. Why do you ask? Because I can see it in your face. Someone just sent you information that makes you doubt me. So let us clear the air. Yes, I am CIA. Yes, I have been reporting on this mission. But I am not your enemy, Elena. I am trying to keep you alive. By spying on me? By making sure you do not get sacrificed for someone else's agenda, Park replied. There are people in the chain of command who want this mission to fail, who want you to take this shot and deal with the consequences, who want your father dead for reasons that have nothing to do with terrorism or arms dealing. And I am trying to figure out who they are before you pull that trigger and become complicit in something you do not understand. Elena's mind raced. Wade saying not to trust Park. Park saying he was protecting her. Her father waiting in the compound below. The mission timeline collapsing. And somewhere in the background, the sound of helicopter rotors. Distant but getting closer. Extraction is early, Park said. He looked genuinely confused. That is not scheduled for another 6 hours. The helicopter came over the ridge fast and low. Military, but not the one that had inserted them. Different model, different sound. It landed 50 meters from their position in a wash of dust and rotor blast. The side door opened and Marcus Wade jumped out. He was armed, moving fast. His face was set in an expression Elena had never seen before. Get away from her, Park, Wade shouted over the noise. Step back right now. Park's hand moved to his weapon. Wade's rifle came up. Elena found herself between them with her own sidearm drawn and no idea who to point it at. "Somebody better start talking," Elena said, her voice cut through the confusion like a knife. "Right now." Wade kept his rifle trained on Park. "He is not who he says he is, Elena. David Park died in Afghanistan in 2021. The man standing next to you stole his identity. He works for the architect. He is here to make sure you take the shot, because your father wants you to kill him." "That is insane," Park protested. "I can prove my identity." "You can prove you have the right credentials," Wade countered. "But credentials can be faked, especially by someone with the right connections. The real David Park had no family, no close friends, the perfect identity to steal. And you have been playing the role well. But I ran my own checks, called in favors. The agency has no record of assigning you to this operation. You are a ghost operating under a stolen name." Park's expression changed, hardened, and suddenly the weapon was in his hand, pointed at Wade, not at Elena. That single choice told her everything she needed to know. "Lower your weapon," Elena ordered. Her own gun was trained on Park now. "Do it now or I drop you." "You do not understand," Park said. His voice was calm despite the situation. "Your father is not the villain here. He has been working undercover for 28 years. Every weapon he sold had tracking devices. Every terrorist he dealt with was monitored. He saved more lives than you can imagine. And now someone in your government wants him dead because he knows too much. Because he can expose operations that were never supposed to see light. They sent you to kill him because they knew you would do it, knew you were good enough, and knew that afterward, when the truth came out, it would destroy you. That is the real mission, Elena. Not stopping terrorism, destroying you and your father in one operation." Wade shook his head. "Do not listen to him. He is trying to confuse you, trying to buy time for the architect to escape. Take the shot, Elena. Complete the mission. Sort out the truth later." The compound below was in chaos now. Men running, vehicles starting, her father looking up at the ridge where helicopter and confrontation and the unraveling of carefully laid plans was playing out in real time. Elena stood between three men, three different versions of truth, three different paths forward. Her father waiting to die, Park claiming to protect him, Wade demanding she kill him. And in the middle of it all, a rifle loaded with a single perfect round and a decision that would define everything that came after. The dawn light was growing stronger. The shooting window was closing, and Elena Castellano, who had made 47 perfect shots and never missed, had to decide which truth to believe and which man to trust, and whether the bullet she fired next would be justice or murder, or something so complicated that no word existed to describe it. She looked through the scope one last time, saw her father standing alone now. No guards, no protection, just waiting. And in that moment, Elena understood what Park had said. Her father wanted this, wanted her to take the shot, wanted to die by her hand. The question was why, and whether understanding the why mattered more than following orders. "Ghost never misses," she whispered. And then everything went to hell. The explosion came from the compound, a roar that rolled across the valley like thunder from a storm that had been building for 28 years. Elena watched through her scope as fire bloomed from one of the buildings. Secondary explosions followed, ammunition cooking off, fuel igniting. The careful order of the architect's compound transforming into chaos measured in flames and smoke. Park lowered his weapon slightly. His face showed genuine shock. "That was not part of any plan I knew about." Wade kept his rifle steady, aimed at Park's center mass, professional, unshaking. Whatever was happening in the valley below, his priority remained the immediate threat. Because threats did not always announce themselves with explosions. Sometimes they stood next to you wearing a borrowed name and a smile that hid betrayal. Elena split her attention between the three men in the compound. Her training screamed at her to focus on the tactical situation, to identify the source of the explosion, to assess whether it represented opportunity or additional complication. But her mind kept circling back to the impossible truth that her father was alive, that Michael Castellano had spent 28 years as a ghost, that the man she had been sent to kill had given her the skills she would use to accomplish the mission. "Movement in the compound," Elena said, her voice cut through the tension. "Multiple vehicles departing, armed personnel responding to the explosion. The architect is no longer visible." "Because he is running," Wade said. using the explosion as cover. This is exactly what I was warned about. The architect has contingencies, escape plans. We lose him now and he disappears for another 28 years. Or he is dead, Park countered, killed in the explosion. Mission accomplished without you having to pull the trigger, Elena. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled over Wade's radio. We have multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Unknown allegiance, ETA 5 minutes. Recommend immediate extraction. Wade cursed. More players. This operation is compromised 6 ways from Sunday. Elena made a decision. The kind that separated operators who survived from operators who died, wondering if they had made the right call. She pointed her sidearm at Park. Give me your weapons. All of them. Now. Park looked at her. Really? After everything I just told you? I do not know what is truth and what is manipulation, Elena replied. But I know Wade has been my friend for 6 years and you have been my partner for 6 hours. So right now I am going with the math. Park slowly removed his sidearm, his backup piece from an ankle holster, a knife from his belt. He set them on the ground and stepped back. Smart, he said quietly. Trust is earned. I respect that. Wade moved in and secured the weapons. Zip-tied Park's hands behind his back with quick, efficient movements. Then he turned to Elena. We need to move. Those vehicles will be here in minutes, and we do not have the firepower to fight off a serious force. What about the mission? Elena demanded. What about the architect? Wade looked at her. The mission just changed. Someone set off that explosion. Someone who knew we would be watching. Someone who wanted to create chaos and use it as cover. We extract now. We regroup. We figure out who is playing who. And then we come back and finish this properly. Elena looked through her scope one more time. The compound was burning. Bodies lay in the courtyard. The organized defensive positions had dissolved into confusion. And somewhere in that chaos, her father either lay dead or was escaping while she stood on a ridge debating trust and loyalty and truth. The helicopter's rotors increased pitch. Wade was moving toward it, dragging Park along. Elena shouldered her rifle and followed, because staying meant capture or death, and neither option brought her closer to understanding what had really happened in Colombia in 1998 or why her father had chosen to become a ghost. They piled into the helicopter. The pilot lifted immediately, banking hard away from the ridge as the eastern horizon showed dust trails from approaching vehicles. Elena watched the compound recede, watched the smoke rise, watched the place where 48 should have happened turn into another question mark in a mission that had produced nothing but questions. Wade sat across from her. His face was grim. Park sat beside him, hands bound, expression unreadable. And Elena sat between them with a rifle that had not fired and a target that had disappeared, and the growing certainty that she had been manipulated by people who understood exactly which buttons to push. We need to talk, Wade said over the rotor noise. When we land, there are things you need to know. Things Hawk told me before he died, things about your father. The flight back to base took 90 minutes. Elena spent them staring out the window at the landscape sliding past below. Texas wilderness giving way to civilization. Roads and buildings and the structures of organized society. But her mind was elsewhere, running through memories, analyzing conversations, looking for the patterns that would reveal who had been lying and who had been trying to protect her from lies. When they landed at Fort Bragg, 2 military police were waiting. They took Park Bog into custody without explanation. He did not resist. Just looked at Elena as they led him away and said quietly, "Ask Wade about Operation Lazarus. Ask him what really happened in Colombia." Then he was gone, disappeared into the bureaucratic machinery of military justice or intelligence operations, or whatever system handled people who stole identities and infiltrated special operations missions. Elena turned to Wade. What is Operation Lazarus? Wade looked older in the morning light, tired, carrying weight that went beyond the physical. Come with me, somewhere we can talk without being monitored. They walked to the edge of the base, to a maintenance building that was technically off limits, but which Wade apparently had access to. Inside, among stored equipment and the smell of grease and metal, they finally had privacy. Wade pulled out a flask, took a drink, offered it to Elena. She shook her head. 1998, Wade began. Colombia, the official story is anti-narcotics. The truth is something else entirely. Operation Lazarus was a CIA black operation. The goal was to eliminate a Colombian general who was feeding intelligence to both sides, playing the cartels against the government, getting rich while people died. Elena listened, not interrupting, letting Wade tell the story at his own pace. Your father was part of the team, Wade continued, along with me and Hawk and 4 others. We were told it was sanctioned at the highest levels, that the targets were legitimate threats to American interests. We went in, did the job, and then everything went sideways. How? Wade took another drink. One of the targets was not a general. She was a civilian, an American, working for the State Department. Your father figured it out seconds before the shot, called it off. But someone else on the team had already fired. The woman died. And suddenly we were not heroes. We were liabilities. Elena felt cold settling into her bones. What happened? CIA offered us a choice, Wade said. Accept that the mission went as planned. Sign the paperwork. Take the commendations. Keep our mouths shut. Or refuse and face consequences. Most of us took the deal, but your father would not. He said killing that woman was murder. Said he would not be part of covering it up. So they gave him a different choice, which was die and let your family keep the benefits in honor, or disappear and let your family believe you were dead while you spent the rest of your life working off the debt, doing missions no one else would touch, becoming a weapon aimed at targets the government could not officially acknowledge. Elena sat down on a crate, processed the information, tried to reconcile the father she remembered with the man Wade was describing, a man given an impossible choice, honor or family, truth or protection for the people he loved. He chose to disappear, Elena said quietly. Chose to let me think he was dead. Wade nodded, because he thought it was better than you knowing he was alive and could never come home. Better than you spending your life wondering why he had abandoned you. The death was clean, final. It gave you closure. Except it did not, Elena said, because I spent my whole life trying to be like him, trying to honor his memory. And now I find out his memory was a lie. Not a lie, Wade corrected. A sacrifice. He gave up his life so you could have yours. That is what fathers do, Elena. They carry the weight so their children do not have to. The door opened. Colonel Rebecca Novak entered. She looked at Wade and Elena with an expression that suggested she knew exactly what conversation had just taken place. Staff Sergeant Castellano. Sergeant Wade. We need to debrief the mission immediately. With respect, Colonel, Elena said. I need answers before I give any debriefing, starting with whether you knew Michael Castellano was alive. Novak's face remained neutral. Professional. What I knew or did not know is classified above your clearance level. What matters is that the mission encountered complications and did not achieve its primary objective. The architect is still operational, the shipment is still moving, and we have a limited window to prevent a major terrorist attack. Elena stood, faced Novak directly. I want to know if I was sent to kill my father. I want to know if this entire mission was designed to manipulate me into committing an act that would destroy me psychologically. And I want to know who benefits from that outcome. Novak was silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, come with me. Both of you. There are things you need to see. They followed Novak through the base to a building Elena had never entered. High security, biometric scanners, guards who checked identification twice. Deep inside, Novak led them to a conference room with no windows. On the table lay files, photographs, documents marked with classification levels that made Elena's clearance seem elementary. Everything I am about to show you is compartmented information, Novak said. Revealing it outside this room is a federal crime punishable by imprisonment. Do you understand? Both Elena and Wade nodded. Novak opened the first file. It contained photographs of Michael Castellano, not the young soldier Elena remembered. These were recent, showing him in various locations, various operations. The caption on one read, Asset Lazarus, active field operative, deep cover arms trafficking interdiction. Your father has been working for us for 28 years, Novak explained. Every weapon he sold was tracked. Every terrorist he dealt with was monitored. He has been responsible for disrupting over 40 planned attacks, saving an estimated 3,000 lives. He is one of the most valuable assets American intelligence has ever deployed. Then why kill him? Elena demanded. Why send me to shoot him? Novak opened another file. This one contained photographs of dead bodies, crime scenes, accident reports. 12 faces Elena recognized from the briefing. The people the architect had supposedly killed. These were not assassinations, Novak said. These were terminations. Your father killed them because they were compromised, because they were about to expose Operation Lazarus, because keeping his cover intact was more important than 12 individual lives. Including Hawk, Elena said. The words tasted like ash. Including Hawk, Novak confirmed. Harrison Morrison discovered the truth about Colombia, about what really happened. He was going to blow the whistle, expose the operation. Your father eliminated him to protect the mission. The room seemed to tilt. Elena gripped the edge of the table. Hawk had been her mentor, her friend, the man who had protected her after Kabul, and her father had killed him. Why are you telling me this now? Elena asked. Why not before the mission? Because we needed to know if you would take the shot, Novak said. Simply, directly, without apology. We needed to know if you were capable of killing the architect even if you suspected he was your father. Because Operation Lazarus is ending. Your father has been in deep cover too long. He knows too much, he has become unstable, and the mission has evolved from intelligence gathering to something we can no longer control. You used me, Elena said. Set me up to kill my own father as a loyalty test. We gave you a mission, Novak corrected. What you did with the information you discovered was your choice. And for the record, you made the right choice. You did not take the shot, which means you are not the unthinking weapon we feared you might become. Wade spoke for the first time. What happens now? Now we finish what we started, Novak replied. The explosion at the compound was your father's doing. He is cleaning house, eliminating everyone who knows about the shipment, and then he is going to disappear. Permanently, with 500 kilograms of C4 and the knowledge to use it. You said he was working for you, Elena protested. Novak shook her head. He was working for us. Past tense. Recent communications suggest he has gone rogue. That 28 years of playing monster has turned him into one. He is no longer taking orders, no longer reporting in. He has his own agenda now, and we do not know what it is. She pulled out another photograph. This one showed Elena as a child, maybe 8 years old, standing with her father at a shooting range. Both smiling, both holding rifles. The image of a father teaching his daughter. The image of innocence before the world complicated everything. He has been watching you your entire life, Novak said softly. Every accomplishment, every mission, every perfect shot. He knows exactly who you have become, and I believe he orchestrated this entire situation to force a confrontation, to see if you would kill him, to test whether his daughter had become the weapon he trained her to be or remain the child he loved. That is insane, Elena whispered. Perhaps, Novak agreed. Or perhaps it is the final act of a man who has lived with impossible choices for so long. He no longer knows how to make simple ones. Either way, we need to find him. Stop him. And this time, I am not sending you alone. What do you mean? Novak pressed a button. The door opened. 4 operators entered. Full tactical gear. Weapons ready. These are the men who will accompany you on the next phase. We have intelligence suggesting your father is heading to a secondary location. A facility where he has stored equipment and resources. If we move fast, we can intercept him. And then what? Elena asked. You want me to kill him? Complete the mission I failed? I want you to talk to him, Novak said. Face to face. Father and daughter. Find out what he is really planning. Find out if there is any part of Michael Castellano left inside the architect. And if there is not, if he has truly gone beyond redemption, then yes, I need you to end it. Because you are the only person he might lower his guard for. The only person who can get close enough. Wade stepped forward. This is wrong. You are asking her to do something no soldier should have to do. I am asking her to serve her country, Novak replied. The same way her father did. The same way you do. By making the hard choices. By carrying the weight. By being the weapon when weapons are needed and the human when humanity matters. Elena looked at the photograph of herself and her father. Remembered that day. Remembered the feeling of the rifle in her small hands. Remembered her father's patient instruction, his pride when she hit the target, his love that had seemed so uncomplicated then. Where is this secondary location? Elena asked. Montana, Novak said. Your father's home state, where he taught you to shoot. Where this all began. The pieces clicked into place. Elena saw the pattern, saw the poetry in her father choosing Montana for his endgame. The place where he had been happy, where he had been human, before Colombia, before Operation Lazarus, before impossible choices and decades spent as a ghost. I will do it, Elena said. But I want Wade with me, no one else I do not know, No one else I do not trust. Novak looked at Wade. He nodded slowly. Agreed, I will keep her alive, or die trying. You leave in 2 hours, Novak said. Helicopter to the location. Your father knows you are coming. He wants this confrontation as much as we do. Maybe more. The question is whether you both survive it. She gathered the files, prepared to leave, then paused at the door. Elena, your father left something for you, in case this moment ever came. I was instructed to give it to you only if you agreed to face him. Novak handed Elena a small envelope, sealed, addressed in handwriting Elena recognized from old birthday cards and letters written before Colombia, before death, before everything changed. Elena waited until she was alone in her quarters to open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photograph showed a young woman, maybe 25, beautiful, smiling. Elena did not recognize her at first. Then she saw the eyes, saw the shape of the face, realized she was looking at her mother at an age Elena had never seen. Her mother had died when Elena was 3. Car accident. At least that was what she had been told. The letter was brief, written in her father's precise handwriting. Elena, if you are reading this, you know the truth about Colombia, about what I became. I am sorry for the lies, sorry for the pain, sorry for not being the father you deserved. Your mother did not die in a car accident. She was killed because of what I knew, because I would not stay quiet. They gave me a choice then too, and I chose wrong, chose to fight instead of protect. So they took her from me, took you from me, turned me into what they needed. I have spent 28 years trying to make that choice mean something, trying to save enough lives to balance the ones I cost. But some debts cannot be repaid. Some sins cannot be forgiven. If you come to Montana, come ready to do what must be done. Do not hesitate. Do not let love cloud judgment. Be the weapon I trained you to be, because that is the only gift I have left to give you. The freedom that comes from ending this. Your father, always. Elena read the letter 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper. Her mother murdered. Her father blackmailed into service. 28 years of operations and deaths, and a man slowly losing himself in the role he played. And now, at the end, he wanted his daughter to be the one to pull the trigger. Wanted to date by her hand. Wanted to give her the closure he had been denied. She burned the letter, watched the paper curl and blacken, let the ashes fall into the sink. Some truths were too heavy to carry. Some knowledge changed you in ways that could never be undone. But Elena Castellano had been changed before. Had survived Kabul. Had survived 47 missions. Had survived learning her father was alive. She would survive this too, or she would die trying. Wade found her packing her gear. Methodical. Professional. Every item checked and secured. The ritual of preparation that had kept her sane through years of impossible missions. You do not have to do this, Wade said quietly. We can walk away. Tell Novak to find someone else. Elena shook her head. He is my father, my responsibility, my mission, no one else. What if you cannot do it? What if you get there and you cannot pull the trigger? Then I die, Elena replied, simply, without drama. He will not hesitate. He has been killing for 28 years. One more death will not trouble him, even if it is mine. You really believe that? Elena looked at Wade, at the friend who had tried to protect her, who had known about Operation Lazarus and kept the secret, who carried his own weight of impossible choices. I believe my father became a monster to protect me, Elena said. And I believe monsters do not get happy endings. They get mercy. Quick, clean, final. And if I am the one who has to provide that mercy, then at least it will be family. At least it will matter. The helicopter waiting for them was different from the insertion bird. Larger, heavier, armed. This was not a covert infiltration. This was a direct approach. The kind you made when stealth no longer mattered, because everyone involved knew the confrontation was coming. They flew north. Texas giving way to Oklahoma, giving way to Kansas. The landscape changing beneath them. Green and brown in the endless patchwork of American farmland. Elena watched it pass and thought about her father making the same journey in reverse. Colombia to Montana, ghost to architect, father to weapon. Wade sat across from her, checking his rifle, his sidearm, his backup magazines, the quiet preparation of a man who had seen enough combat to know that survival came down to details, to being ready, to not giving the universe any excuse to kill you through your own negligence. What will you do, Wade asked, when we find him? Talk, Elena said. Like Novak ordered. Try to understand. Try to find some piece of the man I remember. And if you cannot find it. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I will do what he trained me to do. I will take the shot. I will carry the weight. I will live with it because that is what weapons do. They execute, they do not question. They do not hesitate. You are not a weapon, Wade said gently. You are a woman who was turned into one. There is a difference. Is there? Elena asked. Because right now I cannot tell. The pilot's voice crackled over the headset. Approaching destination. Landing zone confirmed. No hostile activity detected. They descended into a valley Elena recognized from childhood. Mountains on three sides. A river cutting through the middle. Her father's ranch was here. Or had been. Sold after his death, or supposed death. Now owned by someone else who had no idea their property was about to become the site of a family reunion measured in bullets and blood. The helicopter landed in a clearing. Elena and Wade deployed. The aircraft lifted immediately, leaving them alone in the Montana wilderness. Two operators with orders to confront a ghost. To end Operation Lazarus. To close a file that had been open for 28 years. The ranch house was 2 kilometers away. They approached carefully, using terrain, watching for ambush. But the forest was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that meant predators were near. That meant danger was close. That meant something was about to happen, and every animal with survival instincts had found somewhere else to be. The house appeared through the trees, exactly as Elena remembered it. Wood construction, wide porch. The kind of building that spoke of simpler times. Of families and Sunday dinners, and a world where fathers taught daughters to shoot, and that was the extent of the violence in their lives. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home, someone was waiting. Elena and Wade took positions with clear fields of fire, covering each other. Professional. But Elena's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the weight of the moment, from knowing that whatever happened in the next hour would define the rest of her life. The front door opened. A man stepped out onto the porch. Older, gray, moving with the careful precision of someone who knew he was in a sniper's sights and had made peace with it. Michael Castellano, the architect. Ghost. Father. Hello, Elena, he called out. His voice carried across the distance. Strong, unchanged by the years. I have been waiting for you. We need to talk, and then one of us needs to die. Those are the only endings available now. So come inside. Let us finish this the way it should have been finished 28 years ago, as family. Elena stood, shouldered her rifle, began walking toward the house where she had learned to shoot, where her father had taught her the skills she would use to kill him, where the ghost shot would finally be fired and 48 perfect missions would become 48 perfect shots. Or 47 perfect shots and one act of mercy that would haunt her forever. Either way, the end was here. The porch steps creaked under Elena's boots, the same sound from childhood, the same worn wood her father had promised to replace every summer, and never did because some things were meant to stay imperfect. Some things were meant to remind you of time passing, of promises made and broken, of a world that moved forward whether you were ready or not. Michael Castellano stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of the interior, his face in shadow. But Elena did not need to see his features to recognize him. The way he held himself, the slight favor of his right leg from an old injury, the tilt of his head that meant he was assessing threats and calculating responses and doing the 1,000 small things that kept operators alive in situations where survival was statistical improbability. Behind Elena, Wade maintained his position. Rifle ready, covering her approach, good fields of fire, multiple escape routes. Professional. But both of them knew this was not a tactical situation that could be solved with positioning and firepower. This was something else entirely. This was family, and family did not follow the rules written in field manuals and tactical doctrine. You came alone, Michael said. He sounded neither surprised nor disappointed, simply observant, stating fact. I told them to send a team, told them you would need backup when it ended badly, but they sent you anyway, because they know you better than you know yourself. Elena stopped at the base of the steps, 5 meters between them, close enough to see details, far enough to maintain tactical spacing. She kept her rifle low but ready, professional courtesy between two people who understood that weapons were always present even when holstered. "Wade is with me," Elena said, covering from the tree line. "If this goes wrong, he has orders to end it." "Good," Michael replied. "Marcus Wade is solid. I worked with him in the old days. He will do what needs to be done without hesitation. That is important for what comes next." The wind moved through the pines, carried the scent of wood smoke and pine sap and the clean smell of Montana wilderness. The same smells from Elena's childhood, from hunting trips and camping expeditions, and the uncomplicated world before she understood that fathers could lie, and mothers could be murdered, and the government could turn people into weapons and call it patriotism. "Are you going to invite me inside?" Elena asked. "Or do we do this on the porch?" Michael smiled, sad, tired. "Come in. There is coffee. I remember you like it black. Some things do not change even when everything else does." He turned and walked into the house, left his back exposed, a gesture of trust or fatality. Elena could not tell which, maybe both. Maybe after 28 years of living on the edge of betrayal and death, the distinction no longer mattered. She followed him inside. The interior was exactly as she remembered. Same furniture, same photographs on the walls. Her mother smiling from a dozen frozen moments. Elena as a child. The family that had existed before Colombia, before Operation Lazarus, before impossible choices turned fathers into ghosts and daughters into weapons. Michael poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that suggested he had been waiting for hours, maybe days. The cup he handed Elena was her mother's favorite, white ceramic with a small chip on the rim from when Elena had knocked it off the table at age 7. Some things you kept not because they were valuable, but because they were proof. Proof that happiness had existed, that normal had been real, that the before was not just invention or wishful thinking. "Sit," Michael said, gestured to the kitchen table, same one where Elena had done homework, where they had eaten Sunday dinners, where her father had taught her to field strip a rifle and calculate wind drift and understand that shooting was mathematics and discipline before it was violence. Elena sat, kept her rifle across her lap. Michael sat across from her, placed his own sidearm on the table between them, within reach of both, equidistant, a statement that said this could go either way and both of them knew it. "You look like your mother," Michael said quietly. "More every year. I watched you grow up, from a distance, every graduation, every achievement, every perfect shot. I was there, hidden, proud, heartbroken, because I could see you becoming what I was, could see the weapon forming, and I did not know if I should be honored or horrified." "You killed Hawk," Elena said, not asking, stating, because the time for pretense was over. The time for dancing around truth had ended the moment she walked through that door. Michael nodded. Harrison Morrison was a good man, a good soldier. He figured out the truth about Colombia, about what really happened. He was going to expose Operation Lazarus, going to burn the whole thing down and consequences be damned. I could not let that happen. Why not? Because 28 years of work would have been wasted. Because 3,000 lives saved would have been meaningless if the operation collapsed and the terrorists I had infiltrated scattered into new networks we could not track. Because Hawk's truth would have been noble and righteous and completely destructive to ongoing operations that were preventing attacks. "So you killed him, your friend, my mentor." Michael met her eyes. "Yes, I killed him. Put a bullet in his head while he slept. Made it look like an accident. And I have lived with that choice every day since. Added it to the list of things I will never be forgiven for. The list of reasons why what happens next is justice rather than tragedy." The coffee was good, strong. Elena drank and felt the heat burn her throat. Physical sensation to anchor her, to keep her present in the moment rather than drifting into the rage and grief that threatened to overwhelm operational discipline. "Tell me about my mother," Elena said. "Tell me the truth. Not the version they put in the accident report." Michael looked at the photographs on the wall, found one of his wife, young, vibrant, alive in ways that contradicted everything Elena had been told about her death. "She found out what they were asking me to do," Michael said. "After Colombia, after I refused to stay quiet. They threatened her, threatened you, said accidents could happen, said people I loved would pay for my principles. I told them to go to hell. I told them I would expose everything, take my chances with military courts and public opinion. And then 3 days later, your mother's car went off the road. Brake failure. Clean. Professional. No evidence of tampering that would hold up an investigation. Elena felt something break inside her chest. A sound that might have been a sob or a gasp, or the death rattle of innocence finally surrendering to the weight of truth. They killed her as a message, Michael continued. His voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of a man who had spent decades learning to compartmentalize pain. They killed her, and they took you, and they gave me a choice. Die a hero and let you grow up safe and cared for. Or fight them and watch you disappear into foster care, or worse. Watch you become collateral damage in a war I could not win. So you chose to die, Elena said. Chose to become a ghost. I chose you, Michael corrected. I chose to keep you safe, even if it meant spending the rest of my life doing things that would make me a monster. Even if it meant you would grow up hating a father who abandoned you. Because hatred based on lies was better than you knowing the truth. Knowing that your mother died because of me. Knowing that everything that happened after was my fault. The room was silent except for the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Same clock that had marked time in Elena's childhood. Same mechanism counting seconds that led to this moment. To father and daughter sitting across a kitchen table with weapons between them and the weight of 28 years pressing down like gravity from a collapsed star. Operation Lazarus, Elena said. Tell me what you really did, what you became. Michael stood, walked to a bookshelf, pulled down a photo album, opened it on the table. The pages were filled with images. Not family photos, mission photographs, targets, locations, dates, a catalog of deaths spanning nearly 3 decades. I sold weapons to terrorists, Michael said. Established myself as a broker, as someone who could get anything for the right price. RPGs, plastique, small arms, chemical weapons when the price was high enough. And every single transaction was monitored. Every weapon had trackers. Every buyer was identified and cataloged. The CIA knew where every bullet went, who bought it, who it was meant to kill. How many attacks did you stop? 43 confirmed. Probably more that we will never know about. Bombs that did not explode because we seized them first. Assassinations that failed because we warned the targets. Hostage situations that ended peacefully because we knew where the hostages were held. And how many people did you kill to maintain your cover? Michael turned the pages, showed her faces, 17 in total, mostly terrorists who had outlived their usefulness. 3 were intelligence officers from other countries who got too close. 2 were criminals who could have exposed me. And 1 was Harrison Morrison, your mentor, my friend, the man who trained you to be what you are. He closed the album, pushed it across the table. This is what I became. This is the cost of choosing you over truth, over honor, over everything I believed in before Colombia. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not want it. I just need you to understand that every choice I made, every person I killed, every line I crossed was to keep you safe, to keep you away from this, to let you live a life where you could be a soldier instead of a slave. But I became you anyway, Elena said. Became a weapon. Became someone who takes orders and pulls triggers and does not ask too many questions about who benefits from the deaths. You became better than me, Michael replied. You became what I wanted to be. Perfect. Disciplined. A soldier who serves without becoming what you serve. I watched you refuse to let the job destroy your humanity. Watched you question. Watched you hesitate when hesitation meant conscience still functioned. You are not me, Elena. You are what I should have been. The door opened. Both of them turned. Wade entered, rifle at low ready, his face grim. We have a problem. Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Military. They will be here in 10 minutes. Novak, Michael said. Not a question, a statement. She could not let us have this conversation in peace. Could not risk what I might tell you. What could you tell me that I do not already know? Elena demanded. Michael looked at Wade, then back to Elena. That Operation Lazarus was never about stopping terrorism. It was about controlling it, about having a stable enemy to justify budgets and operations in the expansion of surveillance powers. The terrorists I sold to were useful, manageable. They created headlines, but not actual strategic threats. And when they stopped being useful, I eliminated them and sold to new groups. 43 attacks stop sounds impressive until you realize I facilitated 200 more that serve political purposes. You are lying, Elena said, but the words felt hollow because she had spent 8 years in special operations, had seen enough to know that wars were rarely about the reasons given to soldiers, that politics and profit and power were the real drivers, while men and women like her bled and died believing they were protecting freedom. I have evidence, Michael said. Files, communications, banking records that show exactly who profited from every attack, who got rich on reconstruction contracts, who advanced careers on body counts. Hawk found some of it. That is why he had to die. Not because he would expose Operation Lazarus, but because he would expose the people who ran it, the people who turned counterterrorism into a business model. Wade's radio crackled. 5 minutes. They are setting up a perimeter. Michael pulled a USB drive from his pocket, placed it on the table next to his sidearm. Everything is on here. Every operation, every communication, every crime committed in the name of national security. I was gonna leak it, burn the whole thing down, but then I realized something. The people running this will not let it go public. They will kill everyone involved, including you. The only way you survive is if I die first, if I become the scapegoat, the rogue operative who went too far, and you become the hero who stopped me. This is insane, Elena said. This is the only play left, Michael countered. Novak is outside with orders to eliminate both of us, to clean up the loose ends. But if you kill me, if you take the shot and you walk out of here with that drive, they have to let you live, have to make you the success story instead of another casualty. You become the sniper who stopped the architect, who saved the program, who proved loyalty matters more than blood. And if I refuse, then we both die in the next few minutes when Novak's team storms this house, and the truth stays buried, and nothing changes. Wade moved to the window. Vehicles stopped at the property line. Personnel deploying, professional, tactical. This was not a negotiation team. This was a cleanup crew. Elena, Wade said quietly, we need to make a decision right now. Elena looked at her father, at the man who had died to protect her, who had killed to maintain his cover, who had spent 28 years drowning in moral compromise, at the monster who was still trying to save his daughter, even as everything collapsed around him. She stood, picked up her rifle. Michael stood as well. They faced each other across the kitchen table, father and daughter, ghost and weapon. Two people shaped by the same hands in the same circumstances, in the same impossible choices. Outside, a loudspeaker crackled to life. Novak's voice, Michael Castellano, Elena Castellano. You have 60 seconds to exit the structure with hands visible. Failure to comply will result in engagement. Take the shot, Michael said softly. Make it clean. Make it count. And then you take that drive and you find someone who can make it matter. Someone who can burn down the program without burning you with it. You find a way to make these 28 years mean something. I cannot, Elena whispered. I cannot kill you. Yes, you can, Michael replied. Because I trained you to. Because you are strong enough to do what I could not. To choose the mission over your heart. To be the weapon when weapons are needed. You are my father. And you are my daughter. Which is why I am asking you to do this. To give me the ending I deserve. To let me die protecting you one last time. Please, Elena, do not let them make you into what they made me. Do not spend the next 28 years wondering if you could have stopped it. 30 seconds, Novak announced. Wade looked at Elena. His expression said he understood, said he would support whatever choice she made, said he would stand with her even if it meant going down fighting against impossible odds. Elena raised her rifle, sighted on her father's chest, center mass, the way she had been trained, the way she had executed 47 perfect shots before this moment. Her finger found the trigger, took up the slack. Everything slowed, heart rate steady, the familiar routine of becoming weapon instead of human. Michael smiled, not sad this time, not tired, proud. Thank you, he said. I love you. I have always loved you, even when I could not tell you, even when I could not be there. You were the reason. You were always the reason. 15 seconds. Time slowed. Elena saw every detail. the chip in the coffee cup, the photographs on the wall, her mother's smile frozen in happier times, her father standing ready to die, Wade at the window watching the perimeter collapse, the USB drive on the table containing truths that could destroy careers and expose crimes and, maybe, just maybe, change a system that turned soldiers into slaves and called it duty. The shot rang out, but Elena had not fired. The window exploded inward. Michael jerked backward. Red bloomed across his chest. He looked down, looked at Elena, confusion crossing his features, then understanding, then something that might have been relief. He fell. Elena spun toward this window, saw the sniper position. 500 meters, professional placement, clean sight lines. Whoever had fired knew their business, had taken the shot Elena could not take, had ended Michael Castellano before the situation could complicate further. Wade was already moving, dragging Elena toward the back of the house. Return fire from Novak's team shredded the kitchen. Bullets punched through walls, shattered glass, destroyed the artifacts of a childhood that had never really existed. Elena grabbed the USB drive as they ran. The evidence, the truth, the weapon her father had given her to fight back against the people who had destroyed their family. She clutched it like a grenade, like something that could explode and take down everyone in the blast radius. They burst through the back door into Montana wilderness. Wade led the way, moving fast, using terrain. Behind them, the house erupted in flames. Someone had thrown incendiaries, destroying evidence, erasing Michael Castellano from existence the same way they had erased him 28 years ago. Elena ran, but part of her stayed behind, stayed kneeling beside her father's body, stayed trying to understand if what had just happened was murder or mercy or something so complicated that no word existed to describe it. They reached a vehicle Wade had positioned as emergency extraction, climbed in. Wade drove, fast but controlled, putting distance between them and the burning house and Novak's cleanup crew. Elena said nothing, just stared at the USB drive in her hand, at the small piece of plastic that contained her father's legacy. "Who fired that shot?" Elena finally asked. Her voice was hollow, emptied of everything except the need to know. Wade was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "I do not know. But whoever it was saved you from having to make a choice that would have destroyed you. Maybe that was the point. Maybe your father arranged it. One last manipulation, one last way to protect you even as he died." Elena turned the drive over in her hands. Or maybe Novak decided we were both loose ends. That letting us have our moment was useful for intelligence gathering. And when she had what she needed, she ended it, clean, professional, the way operations are supposed to go. Does it matter? Elena thought about that. About her father lying dead in a burning house. About Hawk murdered in his sleep. About her mother killed to send a message. About 28 years of lies and operations and choices that had seemed necessary at the time but looked like crimes in retrospect. "Yes," she said, "it matters, because if my father orchestrated his own death, that is one thing. But if Novak murdered him after he gave up everything, that is something else. That is a debt that needs to be paid." Wade drove on. The mountains gave way to foothills. Foothills gave way to plains. They were putting miles between themselves and Montana, between themselves and the past. But some distances could not be measured in geography. Some debts could not be escaped through movement. "Where are we going?" Elena asked. "Somewhere safe," Wade replied. "Somewhere you can decide what to do with that drive. Whether to use it or destroy it. Whether to fight or disappear. Your choice. For maybe the first time in your life, your actual choice." Elena closed her eyes, saw her father falling, saw the surprise on his face, saw the moment when he understood that his carefully planned ending had been hijacked by someone else's agenda, saw the relief that followed. Relief that his daughter had not been the one to pull the trigger, that she had been spared that particular weight. "Ghost never misses," Elena whispered. But this time the ghost had been robbed. The perfect shot had been stolen, and now she would spend the rest of her life wondering if that was blessing or curse. They drove through the night, put hundreds of miles between themselves and the burning house, between themselves and Novak, between themselves and the life Elena had known. When dawn broke, they were in Wyoming, anonymous, invisible. Two more people trying to outrun the past and failing because the past was not a place you left behind. It was a thing you carried, a weight that grew heavier with every mile. Wade pulled into a rest stop, parked away from other vehicles, turned off the engine. They sat in silence as the sun climbed and the world woke up and people went about their lives unaware that miles away, a house was burning and a ghost was dead, and a daughter was trying to figure out what justice meant when everyone involved was guilty of something. "What do you want to do?" Wade asked. Elena looked at the USB drive, at her father's final gift, the evidence that could expose crimes and destroy careers and maybe change a system that was fundamentally broken, or that could get her killed, could make her a target for people with resources and motivation and no hesitation about eliminating threats. "I want to know who fired that shot," Elena said. "I want to know if my father died the way he planned or if someone took that choice from him the way everything else was taken. And then I want to make them pay. Even if it was Novak, especially if it was Novak." Wade nodded. "Then we start by finding out who else was in those woods. Who else had the angle? Who else had the skill to make a shot like that? And how do we do that?" Wade pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in low tones. When he hung up, he looked at Elena with an expression she could not read. "I have someone who can help. Someone who has access to the surveillance feeds from that operation. Someone who owes me a favor big enough that they will burn it to get you answers." "Who?" "Someone you know," Wade said. "Someone who has been trying to protect you from the beginning, even when it looked like betrayal." The pieces clicked together. Elena understood. David Park, the man who had stolen a dead soldier's identity, who had infiltrated the mission, who had claimed to be working for her father, who had been taken into custody and disappeared into the system. "Park is alive?" Elena asked. "Alive and willing to deal," Wade confirmed. "He has information, he has access, and he has motivation to bring down the people who used him the same way they used your father. But he will only talk to you, face to face, no intermediaries." "Where is he?" "Virginia," Wade said, "being held at a CIA black site. Getting there will not be easy. Getting out again will be harder. But if you want answers, that is where they start." Elena looked out the window, at the rest stop, at the ordinary people doing ordinary things, at the world that kept turning regardless of who died or who suffered or who spent their lives carrying impossible weights. "Then we go to Virginia," Elena said. "We find Park, we get the truth, and then we decide who pays and how much and whether justice is even possible in a world this broken." Wade started the engine. "All right, but Elena, once we start down this path, there is no going back. Once you use that drive, or confront Park, or go after whoever killed your father, you become a target, permanent, ongoing, for the rest of your life." Elena met his eyes. "I became a target the day my mother died. The day my father was turned into a ghost. The day I was shaped into a weapon. This is just making it official." They pulled back onto the highway, heading east, toward Virginia, toward answers, toward a confrontation that would either expose the truth or bury it forever along with everyone who knew it. In Elena's pocket, the USB drive felt heavier than it should. A small piece of plastic containing enough information to topple governments or get her killed, or maybe both. Her father's final gift, his last manipulation, his way of ensuring that even in death, he was protecting her by giving her power, or giving her a target on her back. Elena did not know which yet, did not know if the drive was salvation or curse, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Ghost never misses, and the shot that had killed her father had been perfect, clean, professional, exactly the kind of shot she would have taken, which meant either her father had arranged it, or someone who knew her skills had made it look like something she would do. Someone who understood that the best way to destroy Elena Castellano was not to kill her. It was to make her live with the knowledge that she had failed, that for the first time in her career she had hesitated, and someone else had taken her shot. That was the real genius of it, the psychological warfare, making her doubt herself, making her question whether she was still the weapon or had become something weaker, something human, something breakable. But Elena Castellano had been breaking for years. Since Kabul, since the 16-year-old boy, since learning that perfect shots and disciplined execution were not enough to wash away the stain of killing. She had been breaking and holding herself together through will and routine and the belief that what she did mattered. Now she would find out if that belief was justified, if her father's sacrifice meant anything, if justice was possible, or if it was just another lie they told soldiers to make them feel better about the things they did in the dark. The road stretched ahead, Miles and hours in the promise of answers that would either set her free or destroy her completely. Elena did not know which she wanted more. Freedom or destruction, peace or revenge. Maybe there was no difference anymore. Maybe after 47 perfect shots and one that got away, the distinction had ceased to matter. Maybe the only thing left was to see it through, to finish what her father started, to take the shot that would either save her or damn her. Ghost never misses, she thought one more time. But this time the ghost would not be aiming at a target 3,000 meters away. This time the target was the truth, and the bullet was made of evidence and determination and the refusal to let her father's death be meaningless. The sun climbed higher, the miles passed, and Elena Castellano rode toward her destiny with a USB drive in her pocket and vengeance in her heart, and the terrible certainty that some shots could never be undone. Some triggers once pulled changed everything. Some ghosts never stopped haunting. She would find out which kind she was. Soon enough, the CIA black site existed in that gray space between legal authority and plausible deniability. No signs marked its location. No official records acknowledged its existence. Just a nondescript building 40 miles west of Langley, surrounded by forest and chain-link fence, and the kind of security that suggested the people inside were either extremely valuable or extremely dangerous. Sometimes both. Elena sat in the back of Wade's truck, watching the facility through binoculars, counting guards, identifying camera positions, mapping the pattern of vehicle movement that would tell her when shifts changed and vulnerabilities opened. The professional assessment of someone who had spent 8 years learning to find ways into places that were designed to keep people out. "This is insane," Wade said for the third time in an hour. "Even if we get inside, even if we find Park, we have no extraction plan, no backup, no support. We will be lucky if we make it to the front gate before someone puts us down." Elena lowered the binoculars. "Then we do not go through the front gate." She pulled out her laptop, connected to a satellite uplink Wade had acquired through channels that were questionable at best and felonious at worst. The screen showed building plans, utility access, storm drains, the infrastructure that existed beneath every facility because humans needed water and power and sewage disposal regardless of how secret their operations were. "There," Elena said, pointed to a maintenance tunnel that connected to the main building, built in the 1970s when the site was something else. Probably still functional because replacing infrastructure was expensive and bureaucracies moved slowly. "That tunnel will have sensors," Wade protested. "Cameras, maybe guards." "Probably," Elena agreed, "which is why we go in at 0300 when the overnight shift is tired and attention is lowest. We move fast. We find Park. We get what we need, and we leave before anyone realizes we were there." "And if it goes wrong?" Elena met his eyes. "Then it goes wrong. But I need to know who killed my father. I need to know if Park has the answers, and I need to decide what to do with this." She held up the USB drive, the small piece of plastic that had become the center of everything. Her father's legacy, his final manipulation, the evidence that could expose Operation Lazarus or get her killed or maybe both simultaneously. "We could just leak it," Wade suggested. "Send it to journalists. Let them deal with the consequences while we disappear." Elena shook her head. "My father spent 28 years collecting this information. He did not do it so some reporter could get a Pulitzer. He did it to give me a choice, to give me power, to let me decide whether the truth matters more than survival." "And what have you decided?" Elena looked at the facility, at the place where David Park was being held, at the answers that waited behind concrete and steel and the apparatus of state security. "I have decided that my father deserves better than being erased, that Hawk deserves better than being forgotten, that my mother deserves better than being a footnote in someone else's classified file. So I am going to find out who killed them, and then I am going to make sure everyone knows why." The approach took 2 hours, moving through forest and darkness, avoiding security patrols, reaching the access point for the maintenance tunnel without triggering any of the motion sensors that Wade's equipment had identified. The tunnel entrance was secured with a lock that would have stopped civilians, but Elena and Wade were not civilians. They were professionals with training and tools and the kind of skills that made locks into suggestions rather than barriers. The tunnel was exactly as cramped and unpleasant as Elena had expected. Concrete walls weeping moisture, pipes running overhead, the smell of mold and rust and decades of neglect. They moved through it single file. Wade in front with night vision and a suppressed sidearm. Elena behind with her rifle and the growing certainty that this was either brilliant or suicidal, and she would know which within the hour. The tunnel ended at a junction box. Electrical access. Wade worked quickly, bypassing the alarm system, creating a window where the sensors would read normal while they moved through. 45 seconds of vulnerability. 45 seconds where luck mattered more than skill. They emerged into a basement level. Storage. Old equipment. The accumulated debris of decades of intelligence operations. Elena oriented herself using the building plans she had memorized. Park would be held on the second floor. Interrogation rooms, observation cells, the places where people who knew too much were kept until they told everything or were eliminated because the risk outweighed the value. Movement above, Wade whispered. Guard rotation. They waited in the shadows, heard footsteps, voices discussing a football game, the mundane conversation of people doing a boring job. The guards passed, the moment stretched. Then Wade signaled clear and they were moving again. Upstairs, through corridors, ghosts in a facility designed to hold ghosts. The interrogation wing was quieter, soundproofed. Elena counted doors, found the one that matched Park's cell number from the intelligence Wade had purchased. She tested the handle, locked but not alarmed. Either sloppy security or they did not expect anyone to be crazy enough to break into a CIA black site. Wade picked the lock, 30 seconds. The door opened. Inside, David Park sat on a metal bunk. He looked up without surprise, as if he had been expecting them. As if the entire situation was proceeding exactly according to some plan Elena did not understand yet. Took you long enough, Park said quietly. I was beginning to think you would just use the drive and let me rot here. Elena entered, closed the door behind her. Wade stayed outside, watching the corridor, ready to provide warning if someone came. Inside the small cell, Elena and Park faced each other. Operator and infiltrator, two people who had been used by the same system and were still trying to figure out which side they were really on. Who fired the shot? Elena demanded. No preamble, no negotiation, just the question that had consumed her for the past 3 days. Park smiled, sad, knowing, that is what you came here to ask? Not about Operation Lazarus, not about the evidence your father collected, just who pulled the trigger. Yes, Park stood, walked to the small window, looked out at the forest beyond. Colonel Rebecca Novak fired the shot from a position 500 meters northwest of the house. She had been there for hours, waiting, making sure that regardless of what you decided, your father died, making sure the loose end was tied off. Elena felt rage building, controlled, focused, the kind that did not explode but instead burned cold and patient. Wait, because Novak is not who you think she is, Park said. She is not some dedicated officer trying to stop terrorism. She is one of the architects of Operation Lazarus, one of the people who has been profiting from controlled chaos for nearly 3 decades. Your father was going to expose her, along with a dozen others, generals, politicians, defense contractors, everyone who turned the war on terror into a business opportunity. The evidence on the drive? Park nodded. Everything, financial records and communications. Proof that attacks were allowed to happen because they were profitable. Proof that your father was not fighting terrorism. He was managing it, keeping it at levels that justified budgets but did not actually threaten the system. So everything he told me was a lie, Elena said. All of it. No, Park replied. Everything he told you was true. He just did not tell you the whole truth. He did stop attacks. 43 of them. Real threats, real saves. But he also facilitated 200 others. Small ones, manageable ones. The kind that killed enough people to make headlines, but not enough to actually change anything. That is what Operation Lazarus really was. Controlled opposition, theater disguised as counterterrorism. Elena sat down on the bunk, processed the information, tried to reconcile the father she remembered with the man Park was describing. A man who had saved thousands while condemning hundreds. A man who had done evil in service of what he believed was a greater good. Or maybe had just told himself that story long enough to believe it. Why are you telling me this? Elena asked. What do you get out of it? Park returned to his position across from her, leaned against the wall. Because I am tired. Tired of being used. Tired of lying. Tired of serving people who treat soldiers like ammunition. Your father recruited me 5 years ago, told me about Operation Lazarus, asked me to help from the inside, to feed information, to document crimes, and I did. Right up until the moment they figured it out and decided I was more useful as a scapegoat than an asset. So you want revenge? I want the truth to matter, Park corrected. I want the people who turned service into slavery to face consequences. Your father wanted that too, but he was one man with limited options. You have the evidence, you have the platform. You are the perfect sniper who never misses. If you leak that drive, people will listen, they will believe, and maybe something will actually change. Or maybe I just get killed, Elena said, along with everyone who helps me, along with you, along with Wade, along with anyone who knows what is on that drive. Probably, Park agreed, but at least we will die having mattered, having stood for something other than following orders. Is not that what soldiers are supposed to do? Is not that the difference between warriors and weapons? The door opened. Wade entered quickly. We have a problem. Security just went to high alert. Someone knows we are here. Park stood. Novak. She probably has this entire facility wired. Probably knew the moment you entered the tunnel. This is a trap, Elena. She let you come here so she could eliminate all the loose ends at once. You, me, Wade. Everyone who knows the truth. Elena felt the pieces clicking into place. The too easy access, the minimal security, the convenient placement of building plans and databases Wade had hacked. None of it had been luck. All of it had been orchestrated. Novak had been 3 steps ahead from the beginning. We need to move, Wade said. Now. Elena grabbed Park, pulled him toward the door. If we are going to die, we are going to make it expensive. They ran through corridors, alarms blaring, red lights strobing. The facility had gone from sleepy night shift to full lockdown in seconds. Guards were deploying, sealing exits, converging on their position with the coordinated efficiency of professionals who had trained for exactly this scenario. Wade led them through a side passage, heading for an emergency exit that might or might not still be viable. Behind them, the sound of boots, voices shouting coordinates, the mechanical precision of a response team that did not take prisoners. They burst through a door into a stairwell. Up instead of down, Wade's tactical instinct said that everyone would expect them to try for ground level, for escape into the forest. So they went vertical, toward the roof, toward the last place anyone would look for people trying to get away. The roof access was locked. Wade blew it with a small breaching charge, loud, destructive, announcing their position to everyone in the building, but creating an opening. They emerged into cold night air, 3 stories up, surrounded by forest. No obvious way down except the way they came. Elena looked around, assessed options, saw the communication tower, saw the cable runs connecting it to other buildings, saw the possibility of a way out that did not involve going through 30 armed guards. There, she said, pointed, we use the cables to get to the outer perimeter. Then we drop into the forest and run. That is insane, Park protested. You have a better idea? No one answered. Because there was no better idea. There was only desperate action or certain capture. Only the choice between dying while fighting or dying while surrendering. Elena went first, climbed onto the cable, hand over hand, fighting gravity and fear, and the knowledge that falling meant death or capture, and both options were equally unacceptable. Behind her, Wade followed, then Park. 3 people suspended above concrete and security lights in the apparatus of state power trying to erase them. Halfway across, the shooting started. Guards on the roof firing at targets silhouetted against the night sky. Bullets sparked off metal, whined past Elena's head. She kept moving, kept pulling herself forward, kept refusing to accept that this was where the story ended. She reached the other side, dropped onto a lower roof. Wade landed beside her. Then Park, all 3 gasping, all 3 knowing that the next phase would be worse, that getting off the roof was only the beginning of the escape. Movement below, Wade said. They are surrounding the building. We have maybe 2 minutes before they lock down every exit. Elena saw a drainage pipe, old, probably not rated for human weight, but the only option available. She grabbed it, started descending. The pipe creaked, shifted, threatened to pull away from the wall, but it held, barely, grudgingly, long enough for her to reach the ground. Wade came down. The pipe groaned, metal fatigue reaching critical levels. He dropped the last 2 meters, landed hard, rolled, came up ready. Park started down, got halfway. The pipe separated from the wall. He fell. Wade caught him. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs and cursing. Above them, guards appeared on the roof, weapons tracking, acquiring targets. "Run," Elena commanded. They ran, into the forest, into darkness. Bullets chased them, chewed bark off trees, sparked off rocks. The forest absorbed them, gave them cover, gave them the slim chance that speed and chaos might equal survival. Behind them, the facility erupted in coordinated response. Lights, vehicles, the systematic search pattern of professionals who had resources and training and every advantage except one. They did not have the motivation of people with nothing left to lose. They did not have the desperate focus that came from knowing this was the last play. The final move. The moment when everything either changed or ended. Elena led them deeper into the woods, using terrain, using darkness, using every skill her father had taught her about moving through hostile territory. Park was limping. Wade was gasping. But they kept moving, kept putting distance between themselves and pursuit, kept refusing to quit even when quitting would have been easier. After an hour of hard movement, they stopped, listened, heard nothing but wind and the distant sound of search teams moving in the wrong direction. For the moment, they had escaped. For the moment, they were alive. "We need to get to a secure location," Wade said between breaths. "Somewhere we can regroup, figure out our next move." "There is no next move," Park said. He was in pain, probably had broken ribs from the fall, but he was functional, still operational. "Novak knows we have the drive. She knows we know the truth. She will not stop until we are dead. The only question is how long we survive and how many people we take with us." Elena pulled out the USB drive, looked at it. The small piece of plastic had killed her father, had destroyed her illusions, had turned her life into a running battle with people who had unlimited resources and no conscience. And now she had to decide what to do with it, whether to use it or destroy it, whether to fight or disappear. "We leak it," Elena said. "All of it, every file, every communication, every piece of evidence my father collected. We send it to every journalist we can find, every activist, every politician who might actually care. We flood the zone with so much truth that it cannot be suppressed." "They will kill us," Park warned. "They are trying to kill us anyway," Elena replied. "At least this way it means something. At least this way my father's death was not for nothing." Wade looked at her. "You are sure? Once we do this, there is no going back. No second chances, no protection." "I am sure." They found a location, an abandoned hunting cabin deep in the Virginia woods. No power, no heat, but it had a roof and walls and enough isolation that they could work without being immediately discovered. Wade set up the satellite uplink. Park handled the encryption breaking. Elena organized the files, categorized them, made them accessible to people who were not intelligence professionals. The evidence was staggering. 28 years of operations, hundreds of communications, banking records showing money flowing from defense contractors to offshore accounts, proof that attacks had been allowed to happen, proof that intelligence had been deliberately withheld, proof that Operation Lazarus was not counterterrorism. It was conspiracy. It was corruption. It was everything wrong with a system that had lost its way. As they worked, Elena found a file she had not seen before, labeled simply Elena. She opened it. Inside were videos. Her father. Recorded over the years. Messages he had never sent but had saved anyway. Just in case this moment came. Just in case his daughter needed to hear his voice one more time. She clicked on the most recent video, dated 3 weeks before his death. Her father appeared on screen, older, tired, but his eyes were clear, focused. The eyes of a man who had made peace with impossible choices. "Elena, if you are watching this, I am dead. And you probably have questions. So let me try to answer them. I loved your mother. I loved you. Everything I did was to protect you from a system that destroys everyone it touches. But I failed because you became a weapon anyway. Because you followed in my footsteps even though I tried to hide the path. So now I am giving you something I never had. A choice. The evidence on this drive can destroy Operation Lazarus, can expose the people who turned counterterrorism into profit, but using it will make you a target, will put you in danger for the rest of your life. So you have to decide, is the truth worth dying for? Is justice worth the cost? I cannot answer that for you. I can only tell you that I am proud of who you became, even if it was not what I wanted, even if it cost you more than anyone should have to pay. Be strong, be smart, be better than I was, and whatever you decide, know that I love you. Always. The video ended. Elena sat in silence, stared at the frozen image of her father's face, memorized the lines, the scars, the evidence of a life spent in service of something that had corrupted him even as he fought against it. He knew, Elena said quietly, knew that we would find this, knew that I would have to make the choice. What choice? Wade asked. Whether to be a weapon or a warrior, Elena replied. Whether to follow orders or fight for something larger. He spent 28 years unable to make that choice. Now he is asking me to make it for both of us. And what are you going to choose? Elena looked at the files, at the evidence, at the truth that could change everything or change nothing, depending on whether people cared enough to act on it. She thought about her mother, about Hawk, about her father, about all the people who had died so that a system could perpetuate itself. I choose to fight, Elena said. I choose to leak everything. And when Novak comes for me, I choose to be ready. They worked through the night, uploading files to secure servers, sending packages to journalists, creating redundancy, making sure that even if they were killed, the information would survive. The truth would persist. The evidence would reach people who might care enough to do something with it. By dawn, it was done. Operation Lazarus was exposed, the crimes documented, the conspirators named. Elena's father had spent 28 years collecting the evidence. Now it belonged to the world. Now everyone would know what had been done in the name of national security. Wade shut down the equipment. We should move. If Novak has any intelligence capability, she knows what we just did. She will be coming. Let her come, Elena said. She picked up her rifle, checked the action, loaded a magazine. I have 47 perfect shots. Maybe it is time for number 48. You cannot fight the entire CIA, Park protested. I am not fighting the CIA, Elena replied. I am fighting the people who corrupted it, the people who turned service into slavery. And I am doing it the only way I know how, by taking the shot, by refusing to miss, by being the weapon my father trained me to be, but aiming at targets I choose. The sound of helicopters reached them, distant but closing. Multiple aircraft, a response team that would not be denied. Novak was coming with everything she had, coming to end the threat, to eliminate the loose ends, to prove that you could not expose the system and survive. Elena moved to the window, saw the helicopters approaching, counted them. 4, maybe 5. Enough firepower to level the cabin, enough personnel to ensure no one escaped, enough force to make the outcome certain. She looked at Wade, at Park, at the 2 men who had chosen to stand with her, even knowing how it would end. Thank you, she said simply, for everything, for being soldiers instead of weapons, for choosing the truth over survival, for making this matter. Wade smiled. Been an honor, Ghost. Let us make them earn it. Park checked his sidearm. I always wanted to go out fighting instead of rotting in a cell. This works. Elena settled into a firing position. Rifle steady, the familiar routine of becoming focused. Except this time was different. This time she was not following orders. This time she was choosing the target, choosing the mission, choosing to fight for something larger than herself. The helicopters were close now, landing zones being established, troops deploying, the professional execution of an operation designed to eliminate threats. Elena watched, identified targets, calculated ranges, prepared to make the last stand count. But before she could fire, before the final battle could begin, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She glanced at the screen. The message was simple. 3 words that changed everything. Stand down, help coming. Elena frowned, looked at Wade. Did you send this? Wade shook his head. Park? Not me. The helicopters landed. But instead of troops pouring out, a single figure emerged. Tall, female, moving with authority. As she came closer, Elena recognized her. Senator Patricia Chen, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. One of the people Elena had sent the files to. Chen walked toward the cabin, alone, unarmed, making herself vulnerable in a way that suggested either supreme confidence or complete insanity. Elena kept her rifle trained, watched, waited. Chen stopped 20 meters from the cabin, called out, "Staff Sergeant Castellano, I received your files 3 hours ago. I have spent those hours making calls, pulling strings, calling in favors. The operation to eliminate you has been suspended. Colonel Novak has been placed under arrest. You are not the target anymore. You are a witness, and I am here to make sure you survive long enough to testify." Elena did not lower her weapon. "How do I know this is not a trap?" "You do not," Chen replied honestly. "But if I wanted you dead, I would not be standing here where you could put a bullet through my head. I would be coordinating the airstrike that levels this entire area. So either you trust me and we walk out of here together, or you stay and die when the next response team arrives. Your choice." Elena looked at Wade, at Park, at the two men who had risked everything for truth. Wade nodded. "Your call, Ghost." Elena stood, lowered her rifle, walked out of the cabin, stood face to face with Senator Chen, the woman who represented oversight, who represented the possibility that the system could fix itself, that exposure could lead to consequences, that truth might actually matter. "I want full immunity," Elena said. "For me, for Wade, for Park, for everyone who helped expose Operation Lazarus. I want it in writing, signed by people who can actually make it stick." "Done," Chen said. "I want testimony. I want documentation. I want everything you know about Operation Lazarus, about everyone involved, about every crime committed. And I want you to do it publicly, on record, so that it cannot be buried or classified or disappeared." "And Novak?" "Will face trial," Chen said, "along with everyone else the evidence implicates. This is going to be ugly. Careers will end, people will go to prison, the intelligence community will be torn apart. But that is the price of letting it get this corrupted. That is the cost of turning service into profit." Elena looked back at the cabin, at the place where she had been prepared to make her last stand, at the place where the ghost shot would have finally been fired in anger instead of precision, at the place where she would have chosen death over surrender. "My father," Elena said, "I want him honored, not as a terrorist, not as a rogue operative, but as what he really was, a man who made impossible choices and paid the price so that the truth could survive him." Chen was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I will see what I can do. He was not perfect, but he was not the villain they made him out to be either. Maybe we can find a middle ground, a truth that honors the complexity instead of reducing it to propaganda. That is all I am asking." Chen gestured toward the helicopters. "Come on, let us get you somewhere safe, somewhere you can rest. And then we start the process of tearing down what your father spent 28 years documenting. It will not be easy, it will not be quick, but it will matter." Elena walked toward the helicopters. Wade and Park flanked her. Three warriors who had chosen truth over survival and somehow survived anyway. Three people who had refused to be weapons and had become something more. Something human, something that mattered beyond kill counts and mission success rates. As they lifted off, Elena looked down at the forest, at the Virginia wilderness where her father's final gift had been delivered, at the place where she had almost died defending truth, at the place where the ghost shot had transformed from assassination into something else entirely, into testimony, into evidence, into the beginning of justice. 6 months later, Elena stood before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Cameras recorded every word. Journalists filled the gallery. The world was watching. And Elena Castellano, the perfect sniper who never misses, told them everything. Every operation, every crime, every corruption that Operation Lazarus had represented. Colonel Rebecca Novak sat in handcuffs, watching, her expression unchanging, professional to the end. Behind her, a dozen others, generals, politicians, contractors, everyone the evidence had implicated, everyone who had profited from controlled chaos. Elena finished her testimony, stood, looked at Novak directly. "My father spent 28 years protecting the truth. I spent 47 missions serving the system that killed him. But today, mission 48 is complete. Not with a bullet, not with violence, but with words, with evidence, with the refusal to let ghosts stay buried." She walked out of this hearing room. Wade and Park waited outside, along with Senator Chen. The four of them had become unlikely allies. Warriors and politicians united by the simple recognition that some fights were worth having, even when winning was uncertain. What now? Wade asked. Now we wait, Elena replied. Wait and see if testimony becomes consequences, if exposure becomes reform, if truth actually matters, or if it just becomes another story that people hear and forget. Park smiled. At least we gave them the chance. That is more than most people get. They walked out into Washington, D.C. sunshine. Ordinary people going about ordinary lives, unaware that the foundations of the national security state were being examined, unaware that the people they trusted to protect them had been profiting from the threats, unaware that change was possible if enough people cared enough to demand it. Elena's phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. Staff Sergeant Castellano, the voice was familiar, one she had heard before but could not quite place. This is a friend of your father's, someone who helped him document Operation Lazarus, someone who wants to make sure his work continues. Who is this? Elena asked. The voice laughed softly. Someone who knows there are others, other operations, other corruptions, and I am going to need a sniper, someone who knows when to pull the trigger and when to hold fire, someone who understands that some shots save more lives than they take. Elena looked at Wade, at Park, at Chen, at the people who had stood with her, who had chosen truth, who had refused to accept that the system was unchangeable. I am listening, Elena said. Good, because Ghost never misses, and there are targets that still need to be stopped. Not with bullets this time, but with evidence, with testimony, with the kind of precision that comes from knowing exactly where to aim. The call ended. Elena put away her phone, looked at the three people who had become her team, her family, her reason for continuing the fight. Looks like we have work to do, she said. Wade grinned. Always did enjoy impossible missions. Park nodded. Count me in. Chen smiled. I will provide the political cover. You provide the operations. Together, maybe we can actually change something. They walked together into the city. Four people united by the recognition that some fights never end, that vigilance was the price of freedom, that the difference between weapons and warriors was choice, and that sometimes the most important shot was the one you did not take, the one where you chose a different target, a different mission, a different way to serve. Elena thought about her father, about Hawk, about her mother, about all the ghosts that haunted her, and she made peace with the weight, because she was not carrying it alone anymore, because the truth had survived, because 48 missions were complete and 49 was about to begin. Ghost never misses. But now the ghost was aiming at the right targets. Now the ghost was choosing her shots. Now the ghost was human again, broken but healing, damaged but functional, a warrior instead of a weapon. The sun was setting over Washington, painting the monuments in gold and shadow. Elena walked with her team and felt something she had not felt in years. Hope, not certainty, not confidence that everything would work out. Just the simple recognition that the fight was worth having, that truth mattered, that justice was possible even when it seemed impossible. Her father had given her many things, training, skills, the ability to make impossible shots. But his final gift was the most important, the gift of choice. The freedom to decide what kind of warrior she would be, what causes she would serve, what targets deserved her precision. And Elena Castellano chose to fight, not for the system, not for the chain of command, but for the truth, for the people who could not fight for themselves, for the memory of everyone who had died so that corruption could continue. 47 perfect shots had made her a weapon, but 48 had made her human again, had given her back the choice her father had lost, had transformed her from ghost into guardian. The work would never be finished. The enemies would keep coming. But she was ready because she had learned the most important lesson, the lesson her father had died teaching her. Some shots you take, some shots you refuse. And the difference between the two is what makes you a warrior instead of a weapon. What makes you human instead of a ghost? What makes you free instead of a slave? Ghost never misses. But now Ghost chooses her targets. And that makes all the difference. I spent 28 years perfecting every shot. 47 missions. 47 perfect kills. They called me Ghost because I never missed. But nothing prepared me for Montana. Staring through that scope at 3,827 meters. Watching my father's face in the crosshairs. The man they said died in Colombia in '98. The man who became the architect. When command ordered, take the shot, I finally understood. Some targets destroy you whether you pull the trigger or not. What would you do if duty demanded you kill family? Drop your answer below. Veterans, you've carried impossible choices. I need to hear your story.